Talking about magic. Hello,
Hi.
Erica Jane. Hello, Erica
How are
Jane.
you?
That was an interesting smile. Hello, Erica. Hello. I like
Hello.
that. One. Hello, hello, hello. How are you today? How are you? How are you?
Good. How are you all?
Most excellent. Most excellent. Most excellent indeed.
Having
Most
interesting time.
Yes,
Oh, yeah?
having a fabulous time. Yes, yes, yes. Guys,
Nice.
keeping us riveted. Yes, most fascinating. Very fascinating. Yes, yes. Yeah. So Kay, so yeah, we call her Florence Kay a little bit today. So
Yes, I have a new
yeah.
Florence from Florence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
That way too, so
Yeah,
don't get yourself.
Yeah. But Florence has to learn how to say no. That's all.
Yes. Okay.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Are you going to stick around and listen a bit, or we say goodbye? I don't know.
We'll listen for a few minutes. Go ahead,
Right.
and I'll
Brilliant.
turn back.
Brilliant.
Guys do your...
Brilliant. All right, Erica Jane. All right, Erica Jane. It's grill time. What's going on with Erica Jane? What's going on?
Been busy today. We've had somebody out swapping out our internet, hooking us up with fiber.
Oh, wow. Excuse me.
We're redoing, we got rid of our cable to save money. And we don't watch it that much anyway, but when we did that, we had our cable and our internet bundled, and so they're going to be charging us some ridiculous amount of money for standard run-of-the-mill internet. So Joe upgraded us, and the upgrade still cost less than what we would have been paying.
Wow. So where? Greedy cable company?
Yes.
Right.
You gotta look.
Right.
So, yep, they did that, got that all swapped out, and I'm making some bread, and my timing was horrible because I should have made it yesterday, and I forgot to, and so now I'm gonna have to go down and like separate out the bread and do stuff while I'm on the phone.
That's
so,
all right. That's all right.
Prepare yourselves. We'll probably take a little field trip.
Because my question was really what's going on with Erica Jane, not what's going on around Erica Jane.
Well, yes, but the things that go on around me also influence what's happening with me.
Okay.
So it's been busy, but it's good. Let's see.
So we're going to have a session in which appropriateness, adaptability, fluidity, and flexibility gets applied.
Yes, absolutely.
How magic is that? How magic is that? How magic is that?
Absolutely.
Right. So you know the story about the angel, right? The origin story. Why the angel chose to come down to earth? Oh, okay. Well, it's a long story, but I'll just go right to the particular reason, because the angel realized there's a whole long background story to this, but the angel realized that it was easy to be perfect in heaven, where pretty much everything is perfect. Now, within the limitations of perfect, right? And then this angel said, but what? You know, the commitment to integrity was absolutely fierce, and to impeccability. He said, but when something happened in heaven, this is the old heaven before religions, right? No religions involved.
Right.
Something happened which was imperfect, and then it messed things up in a big way, right? It was a whole big fuss and thing about it, and so everybody changed because of this. And then the angel realized, as a consequence, to say, "Oh, it's no trick to being perfect in perfect circumstances. We need to learn to be perfect in imperfect circumstances." So the angel decided to go down and live amongst the mortals as a mortal for exactly this reason, to learn to be perfect in imperfect circumstances.
I do remember that, yeah.
All right.
That's cool.
So when we forget and the bread's a mess.
Yeah. This bread in particular is a really good challenge on perfectionism, because it comes out strangely for me every time. So, you know, a good learning experience.
So because I was seeing it in your body language, and I don't know if it was just me, but I was seeing that disconcertedness a little bit with the things not being quite the way you would like them to be. Yeah? When you came on, when you started, right? I mean, there's kind of a bit of rocking and stuff. So, Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if you're aware of it or not, but it was there, so okay. But
Right.
anyway,
Well,
so instead of taking that perfectionism, what about if we just leverage it and tweak it a little bit to say, yes, things weren't perfect in my way I would like them to be, as how shall I say, as a plan, as a pattern, as a consequence. But I'm going to shift that to say, because they don't always conform to my will and whim, and there's interruptions and different things happen. So I'm going to shift what I regard as perfect and perfectionism. I'm going to just redefine it. And I'm going to take great pride in my perfect ability to be flexible, fluid, adaptable, and thus appropriate.
right.
Not to have everything in its right place, to have everything go according to pattern. No, it is my ability to deal with things when they are out of pattern. This is my perfection. This is where I
Right.
put my pride in. This is what I stubbornly insist on, my ability to be appropriate, which is fluid, flexible, adaptable, etc. And
I
particularly,
like it.
Yeah.
to not be put out in my mood, right? I'm going to take great pride in being able to mood shift when things go football, when things go out of plan, when things go out of rhythm, when
Right.
things aren't smooth. This is my perfection, so I can constantly be perfect. No matter what, I can always be perfect. I can.
Yeah.
It is attainable because I can always act appropriately. I can mood shift. I can be impeccable. Doesn't
Right.
matter what happens around me. So it's just this contextual understanding of perfectionism. Redefine it. Life is easy. Becomes a strength, not a
Right.
liability. Yeah. All
Right.
right. All right. So we have another angel
Sure.
that's here for the purposes of learning to be perfect in imperfect circumstances.
There
Right?
you go. Yeah.
All right. All right. All right. Yeah, I
I
like
like it.
angels. I see them all around me. I see them all around me. Wow, these old angels, this
Yeah.
is not religious angels. These are
Right.
different beings. Yeah,
Right. Right.
all sorts of creatures in the universe.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's hear. Where are
That's
we at?
true.
Where are we at? Where are we at? That's a big point, though. Sorry, Eric.
Okay.
I don't mean to just. And I don't want to jump too fast onto the next thing. This point about redefining the perfectionism, it's a huge
Right.
deal. It's a
Yeah.
huge deal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we can now legitimately add perfectionism into our dictionary of power, yes?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm
How
pretty sure it's all.
fantastic is that?
Yeah.
Okay. It is there. It is there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's massive, this. To me, it's absolutely massive. I mean, this is really now, talk about empowerment, no?
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple thing, but man, oh man, when you start to say, wow, I've already got this in me, I have this motivation, I have this tool. All I need was this one little tiny tweak, and suddenly it becomes this incredible, empowering skill of potency, of awesome, of magic, of more. It's like, man, this is huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Very
Absolutely.
exciting. Very
It is.
exciting.
It
Very
is.
exciting.
Absolutely. Um, let's see. So we didn't make it very far last time. I think we
No.
got through we got through some of the content of session 1, module 3, and I think we stopped right at the
Yeah. So we just start on module 3. That's kind of in my mind that we're starting on module 3 again.
yes.
Yeah.
So the task for the first session of module 3 was to look at where you are or have been very emotional or emotionally involved. Any such situation doesn't have to be related to BMNs or similar. Then make an effort to fully and truly understand and come to understanding of the situation. Write out the understanding and then how your emotionality is changed. Also, look for examples of gross, exaggerated BMN qualities and see which of them connect inside you in some subtle, nuanced, or vague way. Note these down. Pay particular attention to whether these minor aspects in you are potentialities or actualities. Question, what is the difference between capability and intentionality?
Wow.
So,
Oh, well done, son. Well done, son.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that was quite a
Wow.
task
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm saying like, whoa.
I had to come back to this one and the one in the second session because I was like, whoa.
I told you that it's monas. It's in a whole different league. The tasks and everything is very different.
Yes, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So I know the task said, it doesn't have to be related to BMN specific instances, but when I was thinking about times that I've been really emotionally involved, I was thinking of sort of emotionally charged, especially since we were talking, I think last time, about feeling like your emotions, that's something that's traditionally been a struggle for me, is feeling like I have control over my emotions, or that my emotions are a choice and not necessarily just something that's, happening without my say so. And so I was thinking back to times where I've felt especially emotionally involved from that perspective of, feeling like my emotions have just really taken over when I didn't necessarily want them to. And in those cases, for sure, the first things that came to mind were experiences with Phil, because he would often, we've talked about this before, of the concept of BMNs intentionally pushing your buttons to try to get emotional rises of you.
Yes.
And Mom, I don't know if you were on the phone when we talked about this, but I said my hypothesis with that is that I assume that behavior is intended to get you emotionally charged and really like having these sort of visceral reactions, so that the BMN can then, on the other hand, be very sort of stoic, very in control, and then you look, they can say, well, look at, you're just flying off the handle, you're overreacting, all of this stuff, and it makes you look crazy, makes you look unstable, makes you look out of control, and it also sort of reinforces their superiority because they appear to be very held together and you look like you're kind of all over the place. Right. And so I said I would often become very emotional when I was falsely accused of something, which was a favorite tactic of his, or when he would forbid me from seeing or speaking to people, or when he would intentionally pit my mom against me. And
wow.
Yeah. And so, and that was also a regular occurrence. He kind of very regularly tried to drive a wedge between the two of us to get us arguing amongst each other, or just kind of not trusting each other.
Divide and conquer, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So I said one of the things that I worked on with Kathy when I first started seeing her was examining my mental and emotional state when it specifically came to Phil. And I was really surprised that it took very few sessions to address that overall situation, and that I was really quickly able to come to a place of forgiveness and sort of neutrality on that entire situation, not having this big emotional response when I thought about those different situations. And I said I did a fair amount of reading and research about narcissism when I became an adult, and coming to an understanding of the behavior and what causes it helped me to see Phil in a different way. And I still don't enjoy that treatment or that behavior, but I can at least understand it now, and I can objectively discuss Phil and his behavior and the things that happened without becoming really emotional.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah. And then I said I would also get really emotional about the way that Joe's family treated me. That's, in a very similar vein. A lot of the times where I would become very emotional would be at family gatherings with them, especially with his sister. And although it's still, that's more of an ongoing issue for me than Phil because I'm continuing to be around them. It's definitely gotten better over time the more that I've been able to kind of understand what's causing that. And I said, especially with his sister, I have learned a lot of really interesting things about his sister's history and background that have really helped me understand what has caused a lot of her behavior. And that has helped me immensely in being able to deal with her and not get quite so emotional and hurt and everything when I'm dealing with her. So, and I am sure that as I continue with this course and as I just continue over time, that will continue to get better the more understanding I have. But I can definitely see, looking back on those situations, that my emotionality has changed once I've come to a place of even slightly understanding the cause behind that behavior, I'm able to address it in a different way.
Yes, 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 yes,
yes. Can I ask a question in there?
Yeah.
Butting into your session.
Go for it.
I'm thinking about, how grandma, we loved her. And so when she would get going on her things that she did, we would, and I know Joe does this with his family, when you kind of get used to somebody behaving that way and you love them and you care about them, you let it go because you say, oh, well, they don't really mean anything. That's just the way they are,
right.
Blah, 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 and you just let it go. And I mean, for us, I think that was not a very positive thing with grandma. And I don't think it's probably been a great thing for Joe that you just excuse. You don't have the emotion. There has to be a difference between being able to separate the emotion and just excusing it.
Right. Oh, big difference. Right. Oh, huge.
Well, and one of the things that I talked to, I've been talking with Kathy about Joe's family over my last few sessions with her, and she said, and I mean, it's obvious, but I think it's worth stating and considering that especially when you grow up in a situation with a family or a family member that is regularly displaying that kind of behavior, learning to tune it out, ignore it, just move on with whatever it is you're doing and sort of act like it's not happening is absolutely a survival mechanism.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
You would be in this kind of crazy emotional state all the time. Yeah. And so it's kind of normal. I mean, normal human behavior for people who have grown up around people like that, especially people that have had a lot of influence on them, to just not even see it, or to see it but just kind of act like it's not happening, because if you didn't, you would be going crazy all the time. So I have thought about that with Joe a lot, and I think, you're absolutely right. I think we excused a lot of grandma's behavior, and I remember Phil talking about that all the time, ironically, that we were excusing her behavior all the time. But I think you have to give yourself a little bit of grace on that one, because that's just kind of, it's just a survival mechanism kicking in. If you didn't do that, if you don't have the awareness to deal with it in a different way, the only other way to deal with it without going crazy is to just shut it out.
Exactly.
At this point, we wouldn't want to be doing that.
Right.
No, because now you have awareness. Right. It's an issue of awareness. Yes, you are complicit in a way, but you are complicit without being responsible. There are mitigating circumstances. So in the courts of conscience, it says, fine, you are complicit, but we are not going to sentence you because, well, they're mitigating circumstances. And those are your unawareness. But now that you're aware, different deal. Sorry, deal's off now. now you are complicit
Right,
and responsible. And now you're going to get a COVID smack if you go and mess about with this nonsense. So yeah, different deal. Yeah, yeah. So another thing is you were saying about that's normal behavior, and what we're about is learning to be anormal,
right,
not abnormal, but
right,
anormal, right?
right.
Because tell me how you are not and have not been anormal actually all of your life, both of you, all three of you, all four of us.
Yeah, it's true.
No,
Okay.
you're right.
So now we're just making peace with the reality of our anormalness, and we are learning to deal with it appropriately
Right.
and celebrate it and enjoy it and
Right.
enjoy the ride. That's it. So we're not just in survival mode, but we're in evolution mode.
Right.
Whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Whole different ball game. In survival mode, what you said, to do that and just learn to shut it out, ignore it.
Right.
This is totally appropriate.
Right.
In evolution mode, different deal. So
Yep.
we're just living a completely different life in a completely different reality now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All the old rules, they don't apply
Yeah.
anymore. Big deal.
Well, and I mean, I think that kind of behavior, I don't remember where we first heard this. I feel like it was in a book that Mom and I were reading or something, but it might have been Jen Sincero, but anyway, the concept was when you identify behavior like that you developed to help you and to keep you safe, once you realize that it's no longer, it was appropriate maybe at one point in time, but it's no longer appropriate, that you have to, one of the things that you can do when you're trying to work on letting that go is to say to yourself, okay, past me, I really appreciate you doing this and protecting me and keeping me safe, and I understand why we did this, but it's no longer appropriate and it's time to let that go. So thank you for what you did for me, but now we're moving forward. And acknowledge and appreciate yourself for being appropriate at that point in time. Don't, jump all over yourself for not being aware at that point in time, but also recognize that now we have a better way to do this and it's time to let that go. Oops, we can't hear you if you're talking. Is that just me? Oh no, you're muted.
There we go. I clicked on it there somewhere. So if we look at this in terms of impeccability, what you just said, and that shortest definition we have, the one about giving due respect, this is the point, right? So we are giving due respect to our survival side and saying,
Right.
okay, survival side, bureaucrats, in that circumstance, this was cool. But we're also giving due respect to our evolution, our growth, our moreness, and we're saying different context, different appropriateness, we're going to move on. So yes, to give due respect to that past, to say you did what you could in the circumstances, good for you. That's it.
Right.
So you don't get this idioticness of being burdened by guilt and shame and all of this
Right.
nonsense.
Right.
Because hey, this is the point of unawareness. And what we were saying again the other day, last time, one of the chief tasks of awareness is to learn to deal and understand, learn to deal with and to understand unawareness.
Right.
This isn't just in others, but of course our own.
Right.
Right? So that's it. We have to make peace that we are perpetually unaware, and the same token that we are going to say, okay, you did what you could back then. At some point in the future, we may look back at this moment and say, well, you were doing the best you could at the time.
Right.
So, okay, you're a nincompoop and a knucklehead, but okay, so what? We've got to make peace with it. We've got to make peace. And that's the magic of impeccability. Because I can say, I am going to get to that point. However, I'll say, yeah, but before this now, right, in the past, right, in the past, I said, at that point, I wasn't really being impeccable. So, okay, some of it is a bit on me. However, when I come to this past, I said, no, okay, yes, it turned out completely to be stupid, but I was being impeccable. So I'm at peace with it. I got no problem.
Right. Right.
There's no worries. I'm cool. So that's it. This is the magic of impeccability, is that it frees you from future potential guilt, shame, feeling bad, whatever, second guessing. That's it. I was being impeccable. That's it. I couldn't do anything more. So leave me alone. I'm fine. I'm cool. I'm happy. I'm at ease. Thank you. No problem.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah, dog. I love the way she cannot look at the screen, but she wants to. Now watch every now and then. Hello, Sarah, dog. Hello, Sarah, dog. She'll give that little furtive glance. You know, that guilty glance. She's trying to. You see, she's putting it in wide vision. Hello, Sarah. It's okay, Sarah. I got a treat for you, Sarah. I got a treat for you.
I have never seen another dog behave the way she does when the TV's on.
It's too fantastic. It's too fantastic. It's too amazing. Somewhere along the line, she must have gotten into trouble or done something, because it's a guilty thing in a way.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's too fantastic. It's too fantastic. Yeah.
What has he done with the TV?
Yeah,
you know, sometimes it's just, it happens to be like, let's say the TV went on, and at that moment she was, let's say, you know, peeing on the carpet, and it's association, right? Could be completely random. So yeah, you know.
Oh my goodness, she's a mess.
It's too funny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the exaggerated BMN behavior that I see in myself, I had.
Sorry, I have to correct you there. The lesson was to look at exaggerated behavior, and to, from that, look and say, what like this, but in a subtle, nuanced way, is in me. Okay. I just want to make sure, because as far as I know, there's not exaggerated BMN behavior in Erica Jane. At least I hope not.
I shorthanded the
Okay. I was just checking. Mr. A was panicking. There's like, oh my God, Erica Jane's got exaggerated BMN behavior. Oh, we haven't seen this. What's going on here?
So I have not wanting to admit fault or mistakes, and I think that I have gotten much better at this over the years, but it definitely, especially when I was in school, was a major source of like anxiety for me, was admitting, you know, that I was making a mistake. And I made a note that it's interesting, as I was thinking about this, I was kind of thinking about different scenarios where I might struggle with that. And I thought it's interesting to me that I recognize that I can easily admit to mistakes that have happened in the past. And I noted that probably that's because I can say, well, you know, that was then, I've grown since. But it's a lot harder for me to admit to a mistake that I'm making in the present moment. And I have gotten, I know that I've gotten a lot better at doing that. But it's still, you know, there's still definitely a difficulty there of admitting, like, right now I'm making a mistake. You know, that is a challenge for me.
And you are right now, right?
It's true. Yeah.
You're in one right now because of the bread screw up.
Absolutely. That's true. That's true.
That's what I saw in your body language when you came on. the inability to admit to it now.
Right.
Well, it's not, let me be really particular here. It's not that you're not able to admit it. You did admit to it. It was the reluctance to accept the consequence of it. It's the irritation that I messed up somewhere. Dang nabbit, I don't like messing up. Right. That's what I saw, yes?
Probably.
It was it's in your physicality. You were actually rocking a little bit when you came on in your body.
I think even when I recognize that I've made a mistake, up until the very last second, I'm going to be churning on how can I get out of this? You know, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do to fix it? You know, is there another avenue? Is there anything I can do?
Yes. Yeah. Now, right. So look at that as the objective and switch it to say, oh, how can I appropriately deal with this? How can I impeccably, appropriately deal with this? And now it changes. Now that same ego side has been turned from a negative to look, how can I get out of this? How can I excuse it? How can I wiggle out? Now it's, oh, how can I deal with it appropriately? Oh, okay. And you just couple, oh, wow, look how perfect that was. And it shifts. that negativity becomes a strength. We turn a disadvantage into an advantage. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. It really is. It's so huge. It's so huge. Fantastic.
True.
Fantastic. Beena, would you say Erica Jane's pretty good at acknowledging and admitting things? No? Okay.
No, sorry. You're not.
Yeah.
Beena, are you there? Is you muted? You're muted. All right. Well, anyway, I was going to say, yes, you have incredible self-honesty. And that's the thing, you know. Once self-honesty is an incredible tool when it's joined to awareness. So this is the thing. We're aware of stuff, and we just need to find a way to leverage it so that that doesn't become a liability, that it becomes a positivity. So this capital L leverage is to say, look at what my motivation is here. How can I find a way to leverage that and unhook from that and find a different motivation? Same energy, just reapply it, reassociate it. So the perfectionism gets now reassociated to being perfect about being appropriate. And that's actually a doable thing.
Right.
It's actually doable. Doable.
Makes sense.
Oh, I mean, you know, just the same with Kay. You guys, just every participant, you know, there comes a point when it doesn't always start that way, and we really look for it, and it's a big issue. But when that self-honesty is there and was there from get-go with you guys, that's a huge deal, especially being self-honest about Taninkampupery. If we don't have that, we just go nowhere. We just go nowhere. So, yeah. Can be traumatic. I don't know. Ask some people who are mute about how traumatic that could be. So.
So
I'll tease Beena a little bit.
No, it is actually good that you mentioned that. And I do that, like every now and then I do remind myself by sharing that. It is a kind of mechanism for me to just tease a bit or tune a bit my ego. So it is, yes, it was really traumatic for me, and I was not willing to. I just created a whole lot of excuses for that. And my mind was continuously in that process, like, oh no way. And I was like, no, you were doing that. That was the responsible person for that, and that was the reason, and all sort of things, and very sophisticated ones, not like a stupid one. So I can say, oh, I was not like. My mind was creating all sophisticated excuses and reasons for that, but nothing works because I was not feeling satisfied with myself by just creating excuses, because it was an extra effort. Whenever we create any excuse and we are aware, like, okay, awareness is something, okay, it's we were discussing with Kay before you came on. It's a very amazing thing, and today we just somehow got a view of a different perspective, not completely, but just a glimpse of a different perspective. So once you are aware, and your self-honesty, your integrity, your impeccability, if you are, just not let you rest in peace with false excuses at all. You cannot. After doing every nonsense, every inappropriate, then you come up, okay, oh, that's it. No. And it's very relaxing. Yes, it's not easy, but it is relaxing.
Oh, yes.
Not easy.
Oh, yes.
But it's very, very relaxing.
It's huge, that relax and that peace, that freedom. But one point to add on to that, to become aware that that excuse-making side of us is not us. It is an aspect of us.
Right.
And like any aspect, it can be leveraged into becoming an asset rather than a liability. That's the key part. It's not us, it's an aspect of us. It's a sub-program that we just sometimes get a bit immersed into because of habitualness, but we don't need to. And when we realize it is an aspect, just that realization alone is transformative. It's a huge deal. It's it's an aspect of me. You have this whole chain of O's. Can go on for a while. That's a very magical thing. Very magical thing. Right? I'm feeling some of that O's bubbling up inside of Erica there, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
No. And now you also seeing, sorry, Beena, 1 second. Your strategy side inside you is seeing, oh, that means I can use this. I can
Right.
leverage it. It's a
Right.
tool now.
Yeah.
It's like, fantastic. I can use it. Yes, I'm going to use you, little bugger. You've been giving me a hard time, but now you're going to work for me.
Right.
Beena?
Yes, I was just about to say that yes, again, when you realize that that oh, it was not me but part of me, one side of me, or aspect of my personality. uh, it seems like on surface very relaxing, that oh, it just get you out of any guilt and shame and all these things. But when we actually acknowledge that it is and it might be a part of our personality, it means that we have control over it.
Mhm.
We have very sophisticated control over which side to activate. And this thing is like, oh, a huge deal, responsibility, capital R responsibility comes with that. And just before you came, Erika, with Kay, we were discussing a lot of things, and it was about being aware and being deliberately aware and being deliberately unaware was also involved in that. And we do like, okay, with Kay, it was in discussion that with children and with people who are in a different place, in a different state. With us, we are too impactful. We give them all the chances, and we use our awareness, we use our understandings and different perspectives and everything. But when it comes to our personal relationship and people close to us, we sometimes don't do that. Why is that so? And because I'm discussing now with you, because and in that thing I didn't discuss with Kay, because she is doing this way of impact, but the unconditional love also questioned in that case, that why is that so. So it's all the session of Kay and now you are all connected, and there are so many things involved in that.
Right.
The unconditional love also, our own impeccability, our own understanding, and the liberty we use and give and allowance to other people, and sometimes we don't do that. So it's a capital R responsibility and choice also, that our mind trick us, can trick us in many situations, to just blind eye over awareness and perspectives and all these things, and just play like really simple childlike, or maybe a bit childish. So my previous understanding of, once you are aware, there is no other way back. Yes, you are still aware, but your mind can play, and your one side of your personality can play in that thing, in that situation. So we need to be really sophisticated in that, because people who are impeccable, and we question ourselves that, oh, I know that, and I was deliberate, and I was trying to be impeccable, but how can I be like this? In some situation, we do some mistake. Here comes all these understanding and perspective, that how our mind play, and how even awareness just okay, play very sophisticated with us also.
Yeah.
Powerful, Beena. Powerful.
It is very much in detail, because when Kay brought up this topic, it was like, oh my god, the door was open for me. It was like everything was, oh wow. I was just listening, and then everything was coming in my mind, and my mind was blown up by that it is not as that simple as I was assuming it is.
Right.
Yeah, awareness is a tricky
So,
beast.
oh my God, it is. So we will discuss it in detail more, because I have make some notes about this, because it is going to be in discussion, and I feel that it will resolve that unconditional love, quote unquote, unconditional love also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Beena.
Okay,
Very
is
cool.
saying something, but I cannot
I
hear.
can't hear you. Your lips moving.
No, I'm not really saying anything.
Oh, okay.
Silence and
Okay,
talking.
so you can carry on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. That's interesting. That's always, that topic is just, that's definitely one of those to me that it's a perfect exemplification of there's always more. I feel like that's one of those that,
Absolutely. For me,
you never come
yeah.
to the end of it. It's so interesting. Let's see. Okay, so the second subtle instance of an exaggerated BMN behavior in myself that I wrote down was this one for me is definitely a subtle one, but I recognize, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. I would say I recognize that this is sort of my default emotion, and it very quickly gets overridden by something else, but it's still there in a really nuanced way. And that is feeling better about myself when I see quote unquote proof that I am smarter or better or whatever than someone else.
Superior.
Yeah, superior in whatever way to someone else. That I definitely recognize that that is sort of my default tendency to go, oh, and then as soon as I recognize that that's happening, then I go, no, don't do that. That's not good. And it's not something that I would ever like seek out. I don't think I would ever seek out instances where I would feel superior to someone so that I would specifically feel that way. But I definitely recognize that there is an element of that that happens just kind of by default when I'm in those situations. And I noted that that goes along with being judgmental and the whole universal rightness thing, that whenever we're presented with something that we think proves our rightness or superiority, that same thing with being judgmental. I think that habit of mine and our kind of familial habit of being judgmental just falls right into that, whether it's intentional or not. The point of that is I'm proving to myself that I'm better or right or whatever.
And it's associated to feeling good.
Right.
And it's a legacy default inherent. It's your brainstem thing.
Right.
Okay. So, sorry, I know this finish up. Remind me, there's a big point I want to make on this. Go ahead.
Well, that was pretty much it. I had being judgmental as the next thing in the list of that being a subtle thing in me. That one not so subtle, because that's been definitely an issue for me for a long time. Just voicing my opinions about the behaviors or actions or whatever of other people because it makes me feel somehow better about myself.
So yeah, Beena and I were talking about being judgmental and how we shift the whole thing around, and we welcome being judged. So at some point when we maybe got a bit of spare time, like we're finishing a session, we haven't started a new one.
Right.
You can run by us your judgmentalness of us. Oh, I'm very serious. I'm very serious. I look forward to this. I'm very excited and keen. I'll do it now, but we've got a lot of stuff to do. So, it's like a personal joy for me. So I want to be indulging here.
Okay.
Right. So the big point out of this, in terms of dealing with this side of ourselves, this idiotic side, this legacy side, this conditioned side, this DNA side, you could almost call it.
Right.
This brainstem side of it, essentially what it's doing is it is feeling good about relative superiority, right?
Relative. Interesting.
Now ask yourself, say, oh, excuse me on the spoon. It makes such a nice emphasis point. It's very good for emphasis, that long spoon especially. Anyway, but ask yourself, and with utter, total, complete 100% sobriety and full honesty, say, what do me personally, what do I really want and prefer? Do I just want to settle for relative betterness, or do I want to get absolute goodness?
Interesting.
What's the difference? It's a huge difference, right? Something might be relatively better and it can still be complete crap. The shit pile logic. Sorry, Beena, but that's the only term for it here, right? That's the logic of being king of the shit pile. Because I'm relatively better, this is good. It's an idiotic logic. You are settling for crap, literally.
Right.
That's it. No. So to say this relative goodness, it's a trap that you can fall into, and you can fool yourself into thinking you have value when actually you just have crap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a complete insanity, really. But when we think this through to the end, you get horrified. Say, oh my God, I don't want to fall into that trap. I don't want to just think that, oh, because it's relatively better, it's good. No,
Right. Right.
it's to be good in an absolute sense. Right?
Is that part of like the BMN mentality of just
Yeah.
wanting to be better?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, totally. They want to be king of the shit pile. That's it. They don't care. As long as they king, they're happy. They don't even really realize, but dude, you're living in a shit pile. And it's like, come on. You know, where's the logic? They don't care. I'm king, but I'm king, but I'm king. Yeah, yeah. I had an employee one day come into the store. And this was in the early days of the internet. And he's all happy. And he says, I won, I won, I won. And it was I can't even get close to that enthusiasm that he had and the joy in his face and the like eager and the total. And I say, wow, I thought this guy had won the lottery or something. I said, oh, what did you win? Oh, I won my auction on eBay. I said, dude, all you did was end up paying more than everybody else. Yeah, but I won. Yes, but I won.
That's funny.
And I couldn't explain to him it's like the idiocy of what he was saying. Yeah, but I won. He was so excited that he won for once in his lifetime by,
Yeah.
it's just relative superiority.
It reminds me of the concept being really excited about like coupons or sales that actually entice you to buy way more, like spend more money than you normally would, but you're like, but it's 75% off. I have to get it.
Right. Yeah. I bought a nail in my head, but I got it at a discount.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, right. So we have to be aware that our primitive brainstem is a flawed program. That's why we developed other brains. But of course, our brain doesn't want to throw anything away because, well, animal logic, it works in some certain instances, right?
Right.
But we have to be aware that it is a flawed logic. It's very, very, very flawed because it's one-step logic. It makes sense in the one step. Yeah, but I won. That's all he's saying. He's not going to step two. But I won, and I want to be a winner, and winning is important, and winning is huge. A one-step logic. That's the primitive brain. And if you look at our current politics, it's all premised on understanding that there are many people who just have this one-step logic. We see what's being said and propagated and being proposed and promised and put out there. We see the complete idiocy because you can think two steps. But the devilishness of that manipulation is that they're aware that those that they are appealing to just think one step. It has to just make sense in that first step. Oh, yeah, but we're winners. Oh, okay, that's all that's needed. Doesn't matter in what you're winning. It's just unbelievable. So be aware of this. Again, awareness, understanding, unawareness.
Right.
But when we put this on ourselves to say, do I want to be that idiot? Hell no, hell no, hell no. I'm sorry. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. So the next time you start to feel this relative superiority and this association of feeling good, you say, oh, hell no. And now it's like scary. You say, oh, crap, it's a reassociation. Like, panic. And then you get out of it. So, okay, sometimes we want to deliberately ham things up a little bit. A bit of histrionics is very good for reassociating things because it's the emphasis. So we do need it because originally it got entrenched there because of some powerful emphasis. So sometimes to readjust it and reassociate it, we need this bit of histrionics to get that excitement, that extra emphasis. So histrionics is a very, very, very powerful skill, a powerful tool as well as a skill, beside being fun. So it's a good tool for also undoing self-importance.
Yeah.
Very powerful, magical thing. So histrionics is encouraged.
I like it.
Especially in Mona's project. So histrionics, please do put it in your dictionary of power.
Okay.
It is a very powerful concept, and we will look to utilize this more and more as we go about, as appropriate, you know. So as it comes up, we'll definitely make an effort to do so.
Okay.
Hopefully, if there's time and energy and everything, at some point we'll even make a little mini course on histrionics.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I haven't had any lunch and I am
Here.
sorry.
Good.
So I am going to go ahead and say
Brilliant.
goodbye.
Brilliant.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
And
Bye
to,
bye. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch.
to
Fantastic.
listen to
Fantastic.
all of this.
Yeah, you can listen and make your lunch, right? Just put yourself on mute.
Well, I could. Of course, I don't know how to put, oh, there I am. There's me. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do it.
yeah. There you go. See? Yeah. I was just about to say, don't say I don't know how to do it, dang nabbit. Exactly. Yeah. So all those times we wanted to tell the school teachers, like, nope, sorry, school teacher, we're getting a chance now. And we bring you out of retirement.
Yeah.
All right, so carry.
Okay, so the last part of the task was, what is the difference between capability and intentionality?
Capability.
And capability and intentionality.
Oh, did I say intentionality?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh,
So
I gotta hear this. I'm curious now myself. I very seldom
I
use that word. I don't like it, but anyway.
that for me, capability means that you are able to do something, not necessarily that you will. And it also doesn't take into account purpose or intent. Just
Yes.
because you're capable of doing something doesn't mean that you do so intentionally.
Yes.
And intentionality is being deliberate and doing something with intent and with purpose.
Yeah. I was actually being very nuanced there a little bit. When I used intentionality intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Because intentionality sometimes lacks that extra quality of commitment. It is a promise to self that we will do this, or a belief that we will.
Right.
And so again, it's a tricky question, right? Because it's very nuanced in that what's the difference? It implies that intentionality is intent in this case, but there's an actual difference between intentionality and intending and intent. It's a slightly, or not intending, being intentional and having intent. The one is a belief that we really want it, but we only know once we actually set it as an intent, because an intent is an application of our intentionality. Yes, but without that application, intentionality can be a bit hollow. We might mean it, we might be sincere, but we don't really know that it's for real because we don't apply it. So yeah, so it's a little bit of a tricky, nuanced question there to bring up this. So
my assumption with this was that it was, and at least the way that it made me think about it was that it made me really think about the part of the task just prior to that about identifying potentialities of sort of subtle nuanced BMN behavior in myself, to know the difference between having sort of the capability of those being the case versus that being an intentionality. I may have the capability to do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I will, or that it has to be, or that I would be doing that with malintent.
Exactly.
And so to be thinking about, being careful to identify those things in myself, but understand that that doesn't, just because those things are there, it doesn't mean that it has to be played out that way.
Right. And furthermore, just because there might be an intentionality doesn't mean it is an intent.
Right.
So we want to get real nuanced, real sophisticated, real subtle on this, because you might have, all these legacy intentionalities of should and, BS and superiority and all of the stuff, but that if you don't act on them, it's a whole different deal.
Right.
So we need to be aware that we carry a lot of baggage, as it were.
Right.
Literally in our brains, we have legacy brains. We have those old chips that we're carrying around, like as you probably know, all the processors have all the previous chips built into them.
Right.
For backward compatibility. So I wonder if they still do that all the way back to the 8086 chip. I think at some point they kind of jumped and they don't need to put the old ones, like when they. So I think that they only go back to a certain degree. I think, I'm not sure. I have to check it out. So we can ask Joe. Maybe he knows.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. Anyway, either way, it's important to know that we carry around this old stuff, these old brains in us that are just not very effective. They were pretty good, like, when Windows 3.1 came out, man, it was fantastic. I loved it. I still do, actually. But anyway, got superseded. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm getting my counter prepped here for the bread.
Oh, no problem, no problem. If we can see what you're doing, that would be a thrill.
I will try to get it that way.
Yeah.
Let's see. Need to get my hands out. Once I get this stuff out, then I can look at my screen again.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this with one hand, or however you're doing it. I don't know, but it's
well, I'm
really
trying
cool.
anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I want to make a headband with a slot for your camera that you can put the camera in.
I could get a GoPro or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but put on your head. It's like, there you go. Yeah, I think they do that with the GoPros, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, why don't they have it for regular cameras? You think? I just have to.
Well, I don't know.
Probably out there. Oh, that sandwich looks good.
Oh, I missed it.
Oh yeah, it was great sandwich.
Okay. Oh, I guess I should get these out first before I completely stop.
Are you enjoying this Beena, the tour of the kitchen and everything? I love it. It's fantastic. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, all the magical stuff I see there. It's like, why is it going all over the show? So I see all sorts of fun things.
What are you making?
Bread.
What kind?
The sourdough.
The real sourdough?
No, the potato one. Okay. Now, where am I going to put this? Next.
What is this? What is this?
The computer. Let's see. I don't know. I'm not sure how this is going to work.
Windowsill.
So bad eating in front of you guys.
Okay. Thanks. Go lie down. All right. I'm sorry it's loud in here. Joe's working out and the TV on, and so.
Yeah. So just to tease, okay, just a tiny bit. You were talking about seeing subtle behaviors or excessive behaviors in BMNs, right? And I said, well, it's not particularly something that should be difficult for you since you live with a BMN.
Me?
Right? No, Erica lives with a BMN.
Oh, Erica does?
Oh, yeah.
I do.
Oh, with me? No.
No.
No, I do.
Erica lives with a BMN, and the BMN's not you.
And it can't be Joe.
Precisely. Which leaves?
Tank.
There you go. There you go. Tank is a ridiculous BMN. I actually saw it in the way he walks just from behind. I could see it in his hindquarters. It's an amazing thing. Amazing thing.
I would say that's probably true.
Oh yeah. Very much so. Very much so. So what is that? Garlic?
No, it's oil.
Oil. Oh, I was thinking it was like a garlic oil. Yeah.
No, it's coconut oil.
Oh, coconut. Okay, because it looked a little different in texture or color or something. So different. Coconut oil.
Very melted.
Coconut oil on the bread. Oh.
Are you putting it on the top?
Just to grease the pan.
Okay. But does it give coconut flavor to the bread?
No.
Oh, good. Okay. Phew.
This is refined coconut oil, so it doesn't have any flavor.
Right. Okay. Wow. Fancy pants. Got all those spices all neat over there, Beena. I think I see.
There's the giant.
Oh, wow.
Really crispy and gooey and sticky, so this is going to be really.
I don't know how you're going to do this, Erica.
I don't either, but we're going to find out.
I love this. I love being part of this. I just love this. This is fantastic. This is fantastic.
I know how she's going to make the bread, but I don't know how she's going to make the bread and talk at the same time.
Oh, well, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Hey, I saw that bread go down a little bit, by the way. The dough. Okay. Okay. I was just like saying, man, I know I tried to practice real acute perception, but I'm like, yeah, I'm watching it go down before my very eyes. Okay. It's like, wow, I like to check my, ooh. I don't know whether to be horrified or like, I don't know what the appropriate mood is here, right, Beena? The appropriate reaction.
Business.
Right.
Okay, so all right, I've got my notes up. I'm going to try to do this. So
I tell you what you can do while you're doing that, Eric. Instead of going from your notes, I mean you can, but just to see how much you can just remember and just go overview, just ad lib, just fill in, just practice that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it would help if I had done this not several days ago.
Trust.
I have them up. So the second session was conceit. And this one was an interesting one. I think this one was one that I had an interesting, this was one that I really had to come back to the task on, because I had a hard time answering the question initially on the task.
Good.
So really quickly through the session contents, one of the slides that I called out was privately bullshit BS manipulators insist the rules apply to everyone else but not to them.
Yes.
This one was so interesting. A level playing field. There we go. A level playing field isn't desired. The king bee status is insisted on and coerced to manipulate a situation where their questionable behavior and squirreliness isn't questioned. They want the benefits without the detriments to their persona and image. And I said that I definitely saw that kind of behavior with Phil.
Oh yeah. Oh, he was displaying it in the phone call with Kay the other day.
Yes, yeah. That was a definite thing with him.
Thank you, Phil.
He would break the rules all the time, that he's set for me and Mom all the time.
Yeah.
But if you called him out on it, there would always be some kind of excuse for why that was the case.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah. And it's King B with a B-E, not B-A-E.
Right.
Just for Kay's benefit. It's King B with one E. Yeah. They want to be the King B, not the other B.
Got it.
And it's a nice fun play on words because there is no such thing as a King Bee.
That's true.
Right. So, which they don't realize, but they want to be that King Bee.
They don't want to be a drone, I can tell you that.
No.
This is the stickiest bread dough.
Yeah, I know. I've made it. When we had the restaurant up on the mountain, I'd make bread every day, pretty much,
Oh, this is the craziest thing. Now I got to try to not get water inside of my flour.
And I'd make two breads, not every day, because sometimes during the week we didn't have many people, but at least on the weekends I'd make at least two breads. One regular one, just brown, white, but with regular bread. It's still a variation, sourdough, heavy crust, whatever. And then, whole wheat, whatever. And then a fancy bread, potato, or I don't know,
right,
raisin bread. Or anyway, I don't know. I made some really exotic breads. I don't even remember how exotic they were. I had a fun bread cookbook. So breads and soups, that was my job. So,
right.
We had one very busy restaurant with loads of staff, like 30 of them or something ridiculous. And in that restaurant, we got rid of the staff. We were only 2 women, but then we just said, we can do it all ourselves. So we just did it all ourselves.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. Restaurant on top of a mountain.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It had straw on the floor.
Wow.
Yeah. We also anyway we had because it's on the mountain and one of the it's a game ranch, so you could come view the game. But also as an extra bonus, they relocated the last surviving tribe of South African Bushmen. Now they're more Bushmen in Botswana and Namibia, but because South Africa there was no, you would think so in South Africa people have this idea, oh, you go to Africa and you can just the wilds and all that. There's no such thing as government land or BLM land in South Africa. Even on a national forest you can go hunting on. There, no such thing. All the parks are very tightly controlled. Yes, they'll count the animals, but you can't go hunting on a game reserve. You go to a private farm and ranch, and back in those days, you want to shoot just a common springbok or whatever, it costs you $100. So it's
Right.
big business, the hunting. They charge you a lot of money. It'll be way more. They'll probably be $1,000 today. But anyway, so there was no free land, and so the Bushmen ended up. They were basically being sub-employed by shepherds, and the shepherds are very much at the exact bottom of the labor pool. So they were in real desperate straits. So the owner saw this article about them, and they said, well, they used to live here before because there's cave paintings on the mountains and stuff. So even though it snows in winter, it's on top of a mountain, they brought them down there. And anyway, so with the Bushmen being there, we used this as a theme for the restaurant. So we made the whole restaurant into a kind of like in a sort of a bushveld theme. So we took little reeds, very thin little reeds, and we made little dividers between the tables. We just took branches and kind of clamped the reeds top and bottom. So you had these little reed dividers with the wood, kind of holding it in place. And then on the ceiling, we just hung bigger branches, and we laid bigger reeds on top of that. So you had this low ceiling, so because it was just a kind of ordinary little building, and so you didn't see any of the normalness of the building. And then on the tables, we used like little natural ashtrays, because those were the days that everybody still smoked. Natural stones that looked like an ashtray, and we had like a zebra skin and stuff that we got from the owners. That they had, that we put on top of the, not all the way because we didn't have it, but on top of the straw. And we had candles too. We had little natural stone candle holders, and people were always panicking up. "Oh, just scared of this catching a light." And I would have matches on me, and you strike a match and you drop it onto the straw. It just dies out. It doesn't catch a light.
Wow.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Straw doesn't catch a light that easily at all. So it's not a risk. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. So, but it was, man, people would walk into this and their minds would be blown because they came from all over the world, because it was a place close to Cape Town, because a lot of them had come to Cape Town. And, Cape Town isn't necessarily connected to the game reserves like it is in the north. You have to, there aren't any close by. So this was kind of one of the closest, and they came to study the Bushmen and all such stuff. So you had all these professors and stuff that came out there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty, I would translate for them. I got some fun stories about translating for them.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right. Well, since you're making this, we'll save you a little bit. I'll tell you a fun story. So with all these eggheads that would come out there, all these boffins, right? Because they had an opportunity to study the Bushmen, and this was convenient. They could fly and stay in nice chalets that the people put up there, because it was their gearing for this trade. Just people coming to see the wildlife. So it's very convenient, because you want to go and see them in Namibia or in Botswana, you're gonna drive probably for a day on dirt roads, and there's no roads at some point. They live literally very much out in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, so they're all excited to come in. So now I ended up being the de facto translator, because the Bushmen also speak Afrikaans, another second language in like French in Canada, except it's reversed there. The less English than anyway. So I would translate for all these people, right? Because I could now speak English, Afrikaans, speak to the Bushmen, because their tongue is all those clicks and stuff. But they were spoke fairly good Afrikaans because they had to, Anyway, so I would translate. So in the week when there weren't guests there, at least, or during the day, we'd spend time with the Bushmen, and then the people would come and eat in the evening. So we had plenty of time because our food was all pre-made and stuff like that. Anyway, so they would come, and the first thing they would always ask me is, "Where's the leader?" So I don't know. I must have a naughty side in me or not, but I absolutely always took my my translation duties very seriously and very impeccably. So I would find the nearest bushman who would walk by, and I would say, "Oh, excuse me, they have a question," and the guy would repeat the question, or and they would say it to the bushman, and I'm translating, and then I would translate exactly, and I say, "Where's your leader?" And they would always look at me like, "What the hell are you doing?" It's like, what is this idiotic question me? And they always give me this idiotic look like, but I'm just translating. I said, well, that's what he wants to know. And then they're like, but, and I say, and then, they would tell me, but anyway, so, and I would translate and I said, no, they don't really have a leader. And then they would be all confused. They would be confused every single time. And say, yeah, but who can I talk to? And then I would say to whoever the person was, I say, oh, they're looking for somebody they want to talk to. Oh, okay, well, I'll go talk to David. He likes talking. So David became their de facto leader just because of this. And boy, did this David love talking. All right. So off we go to see David. Now he's actually quite some. His name is David, or David in Afrikaans, Kruiper, which means creeper, like stalker. And you can look him up on Google. He got like a sort of a independent territory set aside for the Bushmen, and he just did a lot of stuff. So anyway, um, he shifted in his role, but at first he was just the guy who liked to talk because they don't have a leader. Everybody does their own thing. But so I just leave it. I don't say a word. You asking the questions, I'm translating my opinion. If they'd asked me who's the leader, if they'd asked me, they never did. I would have said they don't have such a thing. This doesn't exist in their country. They never asked me. Anyway, so off we go to David, and yeah, we sit chat now. So we might spend 2, 3, 4 hours, all afternoon, all morning, whatever. And what David would do is he would just listen to them. And man, talk about the guy practicing capital H hearing, Beena. Oh, what magical. Unbelievable. He would, and he would just feed back whatever questions they asked them. Typically, they came to find out about the Bushman paintings because most of these guys, they were some boffin, some expert on cave paintings, and they had written books and whatever. So they all had their theories, and this is what David was astute and sophisticated. He was incredibly sophisticated in his subtlety and his manipulation of bullshit. Genius, just genius. So he would sit there, and at first he would just say complete inanities, like he didn't understand what they were. Just say kind of rubbish. So slowly but surely, okay, we're figuring it out. He wants them to keep asking more questions from different angles and perspectives because he wants to know what their theory is, but without asking them, right? So once he understood what their theory was, what their pet idea was, he started feeding it back at them. Exactly. And man, this took another couple of hours. But at the end of that, these guys left there happy as pigs in mud. And of course, they left a huge, great, big, massive tip. So, yeah, yeah. It was fantastic to see this manipulation. And, not one of them ever asked me, oh, what do I think? Not a single one. I would have told them, you've been fed a whole lot of malarkey over here, It's just complete rubbish. So I heard this quite a few times. So I said, I'm now curious what exactly is behind because they always had a theory as to why the cave paintings. And one of my things always since a kid was this nonsensicalness of looking for a reason.
Right.
There's seldom one reason, but it seems to be academics, they love this idea of the reason. What's the reason behind? And they get so lost in the singular perspective. So anyway, so I went to ask them, and I'm being a real good scientist. Even when I was a kid at school too, and I did all my social studies, I really tried not to have tester bias. I didn't have a word for it then, but I knew that you could influence the test. So yeah, I had to ask my questions in a very neutral way. Furthermore, I made every effort to catch the Bushmen alone, not to separate them out, but to find a spot when they were alone so that they wouldn't be influenced by somebody else's answers, right? And that wasn't easy to do because they typically together. But anyway, I succeeded. So over time, I asked them all. I said, "Oh, what's what's the deal with the cave paintings?" And I got a whole range of answers. I don't think anybody gave me two answers. The one guy said, "Ah, man, it's just the bloody kids, scribbling on the wall, So to him, it was graffiti. The other one said, I don't know. I didn't do it. They did it, so I have no idea. And that was fairly common where they said, I don't know. It's nothing to do with me, But Okay. And then they would speculate a little bit. Maybe they would kind of guess and say, I don't know, maybe they just liked it, or it was pretty, or they wanted to make a record of something or whatever. And then one guy said, well, to him it is like leaving a letter to his great grandchildren. And he was very emphatic about that. He said, specifically, he said, not my grandchildren, but my grandchildren's children, right? It's very precise in this too. His great grandchildren. So he said, I'm leaving them a letter. And he went and actually made a painting too. In one of the stories that I write, I actually have a picture of him. So again, I just asked them, and they all had these different reasons. And at the end of the day, it just goes to show, you can't ask one person. Now, I saw these scientists. They would do the same thing. They would ask and get an opinion and assume that the opinion was so for the entire tribe. That's it. Every single time. When it was the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, talk about people who were very seldom thought and felt the same about anything. It was them. They just were complete. It was complete individuality, and there was no conformity. You were completely free to do with whatever you liked and be how you wanted to. It was quite fantastic. They had very different things. Now, not everything about their whole system and way of life is fantastic, but in this, the freedom to be yourself, this was profound. So because they had no leadership structure, so yes, there are some certain expectations, in terms of, like getting married and stuff like that. There are some cultural rules, but way less than usual. So they definitely had very distinct personalities. And for the most part, beside those commonalities of some certain beliefs and stuff that they had, and like getting married at what age and stuff like that, there weren't that many. They definitely had very distinct characters and personalities. It was quite magical in that sense. But, yeah,
That's
that's
so
very
interesting.
cool. I have lots of good stories about the Bushmen. Lots of fun stories. So on that, I'll tell you another story too with them. While I'm thinking about this now. But I just wanted to say on that thing with those scientists, what really intrigued me, was how they assumed that one person would speak for the whole tribe. This I find astonishing. Furthermore, they assumed that what was pertinent to that group would apply to all Bushmen.
Right.
How the hell do you know that? It's complete nonsense. So these particular Bushmen, there's very famous South African movie. You probably may have even seen it, called "The Gods Must Be Crazy," right?
Oh, yes,
Where the Coke bottle falls out of the
yes.
the little airplane, right? Now these guys, I brought this up, and they knew the main actor in that.
Ah.
Now they knew him, and for whatever reason, they'd been out to where he lives, and they said he lives way out in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know if they went to go and see him because of the movie or how they got there, but they went out into his place in the middle of nowhere. And they said it took them like, I don't know, it took forever to get there. But they will every now and then do stuff that just doesn't make any sense or just kind of random. So they said they went out there and he lives out in the middle of nowhere and he's got all the money that the people giving him. It's just sitting around his camp. He lives on his own. And it's just sitting there in the sand, they said, and the wind would come up and would blow the money away. And he said, well, sometimes he'd use the money to start a fire with, but
Oh, no.
yeah. He said, well, I didn't have any use for the money, so we'll just sit around them and these piles of money in the desert in the sand. Okay,
Wow.
yeah, isn't that something? Yeah, that's too funny. But they thought he was a little bit of an oddity because he lived on his own in the middle of nowhere. They didn't really care much for him. I don't know. They didn't seem to like him very much. So, well,
I think it's funny that the one that likes to talk a lot got to be designated as the leader.
Correct. Well, only because he was interested in interacting with people. The other said, I don't want to have it. I mean, the one girl, Lace, she probably would have said it outright. I don't want to be talking to these assholes. I mean, they're just stupid people. I have no interest for them. I got a great story about Lace. I'll tell you in a moment. So they just weren't interested. And even though the people were keen to talk to them, it didn't matter. They weren't all that interested, and they could see this. So, but where's David? He welcomed them. He had all the trimmings, man. I mean. He was just he was a fantastic BSer. He was a genius. He was a genius.
He sounds like he would fit into our society really well.
A little bit. I mean, he did struggle. He did have, but he did succeed in getting the government to, this was now after the handover, in '92. He did succeed in getting, I forget what they call it there now, but basically like a reservation where it's
Right.
self-governing for the Bushmen, and they were never recognized as having this right before. Some
Wow.
of the other, oh yeah, they were just completely not given this at all because there's so few of them.
Right.
So, whereas, they have like, I don't know, 27 different indigenous tribes, and at one time they all had homelands, and they got 11 national languages, and it's a whole mess. I mean, talk about a place that has a huge cultural diversity. In America, you just think black and white. In South Africa, no. I mean, there's, I don't know, like I said, 27 different varieties of black, and you talk to a Xhosa and say, oh, like, and you assume they're similar to a Zulu, you're going to get into trouble. So at least it's not so much anymore. It's starting to shift to where they're now South African, and that's a good thing. But definitely this idea that it's all homogenous and it's just black, white. No, I mean, you got coloreds, which they call themselves coloreds, which are the mixture. And
Mm.
also in the colors you have a mixture with the Bushman blood. You'll see it in some people. So, and then some Hottentot in there too somewhere. And then they got like Griquas, which are like that whitish skin. But I mean, not like our white skin, which is more pink and brownish. That kind of, it's not quite albino, but it's kind of similar to that. So also an indigenous group, and they got their sort of little homeland type deal. So you got a large Indian community from India, and you got a large Chinese community. I mean, the Indian community is large enough to be influential in politics. So,
Wow.
so that's how come Gandhi was out there when he learned to ride trains in South Africa.
Wow.
It's my little joke from the movie. You saw the movie Gandhi, yeah?
No.
No?
I don't.
Neither of you saw it?
No.
Okay. All right. I just assumed it's one of those big movies most people have seen. But anyway, he gets kicked off the train in South Africa because he's in the first class and he's a lawyer, and the conductor says to him, he says, yeah, but I bought a first class ticket, and he just doesn't get it why he can't be in the first class compartment. So they kick him off the train, and he's standing there like in the movie at least, like really befuddled, like what the hell? Well, because of the separation, the apartheid. He
Oh.
was in a white carriage, and it's like, but I paid for a first class ticket. I'm a lawyer, and he's in his suit with his briefcase. And kick him off anyway. So that's
Wow.
why I make the joke. He learned to ride the trains. It's a very cute scene in the movie to describe his, to show kind of his innocence and his purity, and his integrity, that he was kind of standing up for this. So it's a good scene, though.
I
So,
need to.
anyways, what's that?
I need to
Yeah.
see that movie. There's a
Oh, it's
lot.
a good movie with Ben Kingsley. It's a very good movie. Yeah, fantastic acting in it. Just unbelievable. Yeah, he's a good actor. So,
Okay,
so
Erica.
all right. So I'll tell you another little Bushman story with Lace. So I got two for you on Lace. So Lace is she's bigger than all the women because she's half colored. And the Bushmen are very tiny. They're very small and petite. The first time we saw them, by the way, we were walking along a road, and this pickup truck drives past, and we just hear this like happy excitedness, and I said, wow, and they drive past, and we said, wow, it's a whole truck full of children. Like, where the hell did they come from? And we thought it was the laborers, it was their kids, and somehow we hadn't seen them before, and like, what's going on here? So anyway, so we go and find out, and it was the entire group of the Bushmen in the back of a pickup truck.
Oh
But they kind of, because they're small, they look like children. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so Lace, because she's got this half blood in her, even though she was raised among them, speaks the language, everything, she's just a little bigger. And she was a very young, vibrant woman, very kind of feisty, doesn't suffer fools easily. And of course, they walk around topless, and she had nice breasts, so she got a lot of attention, which wasn't always positive. But anyway, so one day the big international hotel chain comes to shoot a commercial there. We had movie crews come fairly regularly because of the natural scenery. Where we were, it's a very porous, or not a soft rock, kind of, I think it's not a limestone, but similar. Anyway, and the wind that made all these fantastic shapes in it, and the rocks were really exotic and wild. And where our restaurant was like in this natural amphitheater with rocks all around us. I could probably show you pictures actually. But anyway, so they came to shoot this commercial right there where we are, because it's an incredible setting. I mean, it's just spectacular. And they wanted the Bushmen to be in their commercial for whatever reason. So they see this, and I have to pull up this picture for you real quick here now. Otherwise, the story doesn't make too much sense. So, but it's a big fancy film crew, that's doing this, and they let me get. Sorry, not do it that way. Let me get out of here. Let me go screen share. Yeah, the movie guys, they were fun to see there, because I mean it was such a good place to shoot movies. But it was fun to have them as guests to come, like, and of course we had lots of business, and we did the catering for them and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. Let's see, Bushmen, etc. All right, here we go. See, it's good to be organized, and I got my things in a file. All right, so there we go. That's the restaurant right here. All right.
What was that?
That's
Yeah,
cool.
how cool is that? Yeah, and it was called the Rock Kitchen. Anyway, they took us off. So we had a canopy around it, but now you're only seeing it behind the restaurant. It's actually on 3 sides of the Citadel building here, right? All 3 sides. So to the left of this, let me just scroll through this, because there'll probably be a picture of what I'm. Well, here we go. So this is to the left of the restaurant, right? That's where we sit. Just to the very left of it. And we had this outdoor dining there. It was a little different when we were there, but anyway, because this is taken a bit later. So on the very left-hand side of these rocks that are on the back here, there's one kind of like this middle one, but it has a slope to it a little bitty, kind of like this over here. But anyway, so they wanted a shot of Lace, and her name is Lace. It's pronounced like Lace, but it's actually the Afrikaans word for louse. Right.
Oh.
So she had Louse once upon a time, and the nickname sticks. So it's the singular version of it, right? So she had Lice, and so Louse. Anyway, but it's pronounced Lace. So anyway, so they wanted a shot of Lace on top of these rocks on the stop, standing there, and they just wanted a shot of her standing there. Who knows what they had the idea in their commercial. So okay, I'm the translator. So they call Lace, they spied her in the thing. Okay, they adapted their script a little bit, I figured. So anyway, so I explained to Lace what they want, and she says, oh, okay. And off she sets, to go climb up the rocks to stand on top. Wait! Oh my God, the producer just about had a cadenza over there. He's like in a panic. Oh, I said, what the hell now? I said, hold on, Lace, hold on, wait. Okay. So she comes back. He says, oh no, but and then he calls the safety guy over. And the safety guy has the ropes and all of the stuff with it, the clamps and all the stuff, anyway, so he gives her this whole safety rope with a harness and everything. And so he says, oh no, she has to, he just gives it to me and says, yeah, like assuming she's going to know. And so, of course, me and my naughtiness, I just say, yeah, I give it to her. Okay. She nods, and they can hear the sort of see the nod in the acquiescence. Okay, they're all relieved. Okay, the next thing she goes, and she just, boy, she was very fit and very athletic. She just plain flat scrambled up this rock face here to the top with this safety gear over her shoulder. Oh, these guys just about died. And then they realized it was too late to say anything, and you can just hear them, lawsuits, insurance. You can just see the panic in them, but she makes it to the top. Oh, the relief on them was just too funny, But the worst part is, so now Lace is standing up there, and she's looking down at them, and she takes the stuff off her shoulder, and she shouts down at me, what do I do with this? She may have said, what the hell do I do with this? But anyway, her tone was very much like, what the hell do I do with this stuff that I had to drag up here? And so then I translate, and I say, well, she says, what does she do with this? And the producer's like, just tell her to throw it down. Oh my God, the look on her face when I said this, the look of pure disgust, like, what the hell kind of idiots are you making me drag this stuff up here, and then you tell me to throw it down? But okay, stupid white man, and she throws it down. Oh, you could just see them shrink right there. It was too fantastic. It was brilliant. Yeah. So that was nice for you. But she was kind of wild too. So I'll tell you one my story. I don't know. Are you still doing your bread, Erica? You finished? Okay. All right. Well, while I'm telling Bushman stories here now, this is them. This is actually them, the ones that we knew. So they did this little dance at night around the firelight, their traditional tribal dance. And it was very boring. I got to tell you, it was a big letdown. So there's more shots. I'm just running through this real quick. This is him. I was looking for him. This is David. That's him. That's him. He's a little older here than when I knew him, but this is him. This is him.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'll show you a couple more pictures here. I don't know if it's in this file or not. Oh, that's where I went to school. This is the field for the school. So
Wow.
and it looked out over this bay, and right there it's like a prime surfing spot. So all the surfers, when the waves would come in, then they'd suddenly get sick. So anyway, they're probably more pictures, but it will be a while to look at all of them. So
Still the one with the stars.
go back, you mean?
Yeah, there was one that had all these beautiful stars.
Oh.
Keep going.
This is a shot at night. At night, yeah.
Beautiful. Oh my God.
Because there are very few natural lights, and for this they lit up the mountain, but to show this picture, put the spotlights on it. But typically, I mean, it's just if there's no moon, there's no light there from anything from anywhere. So yeah. I mean, you get incredible views. Plus, looking out, if this direction is right, on the other side further. There's this big kind of a low elevation valley where we also stayed in for a while. It's kind of like a death valley. It's very hot, extremely dry anyway. And it's got very low ozone over that area. So it made it even hotter because of the ozone. So again, you got to see the stars pretty good because of it. So yeah.
Well, I went on, well, when I lived in Salt Lake, I used to get to go to the desert a lot. And I went on a trip, an outward bound trip for the magazine that I worked for. And we were 10 days in the desert. And I mean, you don't even imagine that there are that many stars. You can't even imagine.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
there are that many stars.
Exactly. You really see that uncountableness.
Oh, yeah.
This is a picture of that.
That's a great picture.
Yeah. I didn't take any of these pictures. I found them on the internet. So
those are awesome.
Before I head upstairs.
Okay. So I want to show you one more. Oh, so now just a quick story while Erica Jane goes upstairs. So this is the guy who said about the things to his great grandchildren, the pictures, right? This is him. Basically, he's older year than when I knew him, and this is David's brother. So one day we're just hanging around, and they said, "Oh, we want to go to the store." The two of them. Now you might think, well, somebody's saying we'll go to the store. It's like, okay, big deal. Well, when the store's 30 miles away and you don't have transport, it is a big deal. So, okay, off they set, jogging, and they jog all the way to the store, and they come back later in the day. That's it.
Oh
no
my
fuss,
God.
no muss. Yeah, just like that, out of the blue. And I never really saw them jog anywhere else. It was the only time. It's too amazing.
That's a lot of walking.
No, they jogged all the way there and back.
Well, that's even more impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're known for that, the ability to jog long distance like that. So, yeah, just something. So yeah, you get to see the rock shapes a little bit, on the farm, lots of stuff like this, and then you had like Mickey Mouse, and people would see shapes in them. So it was a big feature of the property. It was a really nice place, I mean, really quite profound. Here's some of the game. These are sable antelope.
Wow.
Yeah. So one day when they brought these in, one of them they thought may have been but injured in the truck. So they asked the owners of the farm asked me to go with the Bushmen, just kind of organize them to track and see if it was okay. So we just tracked this, and because they're really good at tracking. At least these ones were still had that skill, even though they hadn't been hunting really, because they never had really the opportunity. But still, it was interesting to see how they did this, and I followed up on this. It was completely intuitive, completely right brain. So, for instance, when they looked at a track, they would feel what it was, not see it. Like if you saw a track in the ground, you would say, "Oh, it's this size and this deep and this big and it's got this shape. Okay, it must be this thing." We would analyze it and do this comparative thing, but they don't do this. Like I showed them the same tracks that they'd been following. I showed them in a tracking book, on paper, and they had no clue. They got every single one completely wrong. They were just guessing. They had no idea what it was when I showed it to them in the book.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, because they felt it in the book. That didn't have that feeling, and they could tell you all sorts of stuff. They say, okay, this one was a female and she's pregnant and all this, and they just knew it. It wasn't an analytical, deductive point. So
No.
yeah, very fascinating to see from a point of different psychology. So
No kidding. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Lots of exciting stuff. Lots of exciting stuff. So
Okay.
see if there's while we're about it, any more fun pictures. So yeah. There's lots. There's lots.
Yeah, look at all those.
Yeah. Well, some of them are mixed up with other stuff, but I think this is the chalet. This one here. That's the chalet that yeah, this is it, that the guests would stay in, so they call them chalets, but they're just houses pretty much. And that's thatched roofs. It's like a very particular reed that they do, and it's open inside and no ceiling. It's very dense. It's very covered. So it's very nice. It's really nice to be in. It's a very unique thing. So
is it still there?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's called kaha kaha kama, but Americans can't say it. It's Kagga and then Kamma. So yeah, it's still there. Still, I think that those original ones have sold it now, but so,
Right.
yeah. So
Wow.
anyway, yeah, I got more fun stories, but I'll tell you another time. So I got lots. I got lots. I mean, and again, they will come in the young man story or the young man story. Actually, that's the young man story. But because it's when you get into the psychology of it, there's lots that goes on. And the other story I wanted to tell you about, Lace, actually, it's kind of an important story. So since I'm remembering it now, I'll tell you. So since we're on top of this mountain, it's a whole kind of escarpment on top there, and it's like the mountains in Arizona, I guess, very similar. But anyway, so it's its own little ecosphere out there, and you don't feel like you're like this on a mountain top. You know what I mean? When you look out, you can't say that you're on a mountain, but you can drive to the edge of it and look, and kind of see. Okay, yeah, it goes down. So anyway, so of course it snows there in the winter. I mean, really heavy snow in the winter. It's a big deal. So it started to get where they, I think it was obviously fall or whatever, and so the owners asked me to build and supervise the building of more permanent housing for them, because their shelters they just branches and the reeds and the stuff is loosely packed on, it's tied on. They're very flimsy little deals, and they tiny. I mean, I couldn't lie across the bottom of it, right? I would have to kind of pull myself in. So it's not even 6 feet in diameter. It's more like 5 feet in diameter. And they would all squish in their whole family lie right on top of each other. It doesn't matter. So yeah, it's quite amazing. So anyway, so of course this would be no protection in winter. The snows would probably just collapse those things. Anyway, so I was looking to build them with more permanent housing, and I used um, plastic to insulate these things. And anyway, so I go around and I ask them all, say, where would you like these houses to be built? So I come to Lace and I ask her this, because I'm just like, well, it's up to me. I can put them anywhere, but I might as well put them where you'd like them to be. So I didn't really get answers from anybody, which was fascinating. So I asked Lace, oh my goodness, I might as well have said, I don't know what, but she just went off on me. And she just like really is upset with me. And I'm like, what the bloody hell? And I tried to explain, and the more I tried to explain, the more upset she gets with me. And she's just like really angry and annoyed and irritated and bothered me, and she's just letting me have it. It's like eventually I'm like, bloody hell, woman, I'm trying to help you, and yeah, you kind of scolding me. So I got a bit irritated, and then I kind of pushed back and I said, but what the hell, I'm trying to help you out. I'm being polite and courteous. I don't have to do this. And so I really pushed back on this, because I let it run for quite a while, before I did that. But then I got really annoyed, and I could really feel my annoyance, because I really think, what the heck, I'm really trying to do you a favor and you're giving me all this crap. So anyway, off she goes, end of story. And she goes, and I kind of like a little bit bewildered, and I go and find a few more, and I guess nobody was talking to me. So anyway, so I went off and I came back, and I come back and I see all the women, and they kind of crowded around something. Oh, okay, I see. Oh, it's Lace lying on the ground on her back. Oh my God, did I get the filthiest, dirtiest, most horrendous looks from all these women? Oh my God, you bastard, you kind of a look, right? What the hell did I do now? It's like, anyway, so I asked the one woman, I think it was David's wife, maybe. But anyway, I asked her, like, what's going on? What did I do? They said, no, you put something in her, you made Lace sick.
Ah.
So my annoyance made her ill, and all they were doing there now was working on her stomach and rubbing it with potions and whatever to extract this negativity that I'd put in her.
Wow.
Yes, wow. Yes, wow. Now, for me, the part of this is I could feel it when it was happening, and I was, I almost intentionally and deliberately was pushing back with that negative energy because, wow, I was certainly getting it. So, I when I got to that point of irritation, I was deliberately pushing back, and this made me realize, wow, this isn't just a matter of, like kind of sorting things out and saying, look, back off or whatever, claiming your space. This has a physical consequence. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a very profound lesson. It was a very big deal. Now, fortunately, Lace didn't hold grudges, and the next day we were friends again, and everything was good. Now, to go a little deeper into the story with psychology. So I kind of explored a little bit into what's going on. And as I pieced the thing together, it was, she was annoyed that in the first place that it was my job and it was my job to decide. This
Mm.
concept of courtesy and going above and beyond, nobility of, especially from a white man. This is still during apartheid time, right? It was right on the cusp of the change, by the way, but nonetheless, from somebody like me, was kind of foreign, the idea. So she just thought I'm being full of crap in a way, right? And it's like, what the hell is the matter with you? Like, so, and her annoyance, because by that time already we were kind of part of the tribe. So she thought I was just not failing in my responsibility. And so she was kind of scolding me for doing that, right? It's your job to decide why are you asking us to do your job for you? That was the logic, right? Fascinating, completely different logic.
Yeah.
Furthermore, she had been abused by white farmers, right? Taking advantage of her. She's an attractive young woman, and the position, the status. So here comes along a white man who doesn't do that,
Mm.
and
Messed it
this was difficult for her to deal with. Yeah, it was very, very difficult. So she kind of really had a very deliberate and definitive negativity towards white men. But then when I came along, and there's a bit of a story more to this before this already, she kind of realized that it was that what she'd accepted as just a hierarchy thing, the way the African dogs say, well, I got to get out of the way when the lions comes at this watering hole, there's this hierarchy. She just took it that, sort of a part of life, that, well, you can't help it, they're superior, they got the power, and they can abuse you. But when she encountered me, and in that moment when I explained that I'm being nice and courteous, that guilt for her to realize that she'd been that
right.
that not the guilt, sorry, that those farmers, those white men, they had guilt, and what they were doing was unnecessary and not needed. It was abuse, not just a function of power, not just an automatic thing that happens. They didn't need to do it. They didn't have to be that way. And, because a white man could be nice, could be considerate, could be kind and courteous and all this. So that was quite a shock to her system. And of course, her own guilt at not realizing this and not being aware, and, painting me with that same brush a little bit, So there's a lot of complexity in that. It was a big deal. It was a very big, big, big story. Uh,
Wow.
there are simple things, when we look at them a little bit more, and we look at the deepness of it, and we make that effort to come to resolution, we really see how things. And of course, this is a whole BMN deal. So okay, let me. That's a horrible story. So I'll just end with a fun story. So you saw in one of those pictures there was a guy making a fire, and they make the stingiest fires you can ever imagine. I mean, they will take a piece of wood about this big, 2 inches across, maybe, you know 2 inches by 2 inches, just like, and they make a fire out of that. It's incredible, because where they come from in the Kalahari up that north, very little natural wood there. It's all sand, it's semi-desert scrub bush, so not many trees. So they have to be very careful with it. Anyway, so they make these little tiny fires, and they have these little tiny cast iron pots. I mean, the pots are, I guess, smaller than my head, with this little tiny pot on there. So they eat everything, the Bushmen. Absolutely everything. Doesn't matter. Grasshoppers, snails, you name it, worms. I don't care. If it moves, they'll eat it. Everything they eat. So I saw them eating this stuff like this, and I was most curious. So again, I do my test. I get them one by one, and I ask them, "What's your favorite food?" So, they said snake. One said this, one said that, and the one woman said a camel. She says, but the one with the humps, not the tall one, because in Afrikaans, the tall one's a giraffe. In other words, it's called a camel horse in Afrikaans.
Oh,
Okay, so the name is slightly similar. Yeah, I don't know why it's called a camel horse, but anyway. So she said, no, the one with the humps, and you find them in Namibia. It's very unusual, but they are up there. So she ate this at one point in time. How, I don't know. But she said, oh, that was a. But then they had all the different ones. But most of them said, if not their first favorite, but their second favorite would be wild donkey. This was common. This is very unusual that they had commonality, right? So everything else was different except for this. So, wow, that's very interesting. So I said to the owners, because we order food for the restaurant, I said, look, could you possibly get some donkey? Might not be wild donkey, but, I asked them all, their favorite. Okay, so they get me this donkey, and I take it out to the camp. So, I'm sitting there, and we're watching the fire as they're making this, and they're preparing it. Because I want to stick around. I want to see how they prepare this and what they're doing. So, this takes the whole day pretty much, but they make the fire, and they have a very peculiar thing with their cooking. They would put something, you'd make a pot, and somebody would walk by, and they just kind of open the pot and eat something and go off. And they weren't necessarily close family, and it was sort of like, I don't know, just a communal pot, but not really a communal pot. It was really intriguing, the balance there. So anyway, so I'm watching the stuff, and man, as the stuff is cooking and boiling there, I mean, we're hanging out for hours because I want to see this, but I'm also keen to taste it. And every now and then somebody comes, and I catch a whiff of this pot. Oh my God, it smells so delicious. And man, I'm just like, man, I don't want to ask because I don't have a lot, So I'm like, but man, eventually I say, no, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. I got to ask. So this is David's wife. I say to her, I say, would you mind? Because now at that point, I don't know, 5 or 6 people had walked past and taken a little bit out of the pot. I said, would you mind if I tasted a little bit of the donkey? And I asked very, very, very apologetically like that, like very, like if it's possible, if I could maybe possibly. Oh my God, the moment I ask this question, off she goes. She just leaves me. She didn't even respond. And the next thing, the bedlam in the camp, chaos.
Nope.
I see people back and forth, squirreling about, and it's chaos. Like, what the hell did I do now? It's like, oh my God, what did I just want a little bit? Okay, I'm sitting there, I don't know what I've done. The next thing, I have to sit up a little bit because I get this delegation approaching me, right? A little group of them, and it's totally in delegation mode. And the guy with the cave paintings, he's the spokesman. I says, very sorry, sir. I have to report, I have to say, we are unable to comply to your request because we are unable to provide the appropriate crockery and cutlery for someone of your station. Very formal like this, right? Says to me. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then I realized that to them, in their mind, they didn't have the appropriate cutlery and crockery to serve, somebody, a white man, and okay, Livia was with me too, a white couple. So it's like just, and I said, man, I'll just take it out of the pot with my fingers like you guys. Oh my God, the moment I say this, bedlam breaks out again. Oh, crikey, what did I do now? What's scary about? The next thing we know, the whole tribe is sitting right on top of us. I mean, in the space of, I don't know, 3-4 feet, every single one of them, about 25 or so. right on top of us, and they're running their fingers through our hair, holding our arms, grandpa, grandma, little kids, the whole lot, boy, right on top of you, with their hands all over you, sitting completely. I mean, they had like on our legs, on our back, everywhere, just completely packed around us like that.
Wow.
Yeah, because when I said, "Ah, man, I'll just take it out of the pot of my fingers like you guys," they realized that I wasn't in that the bullshit of the hierarchy and the status, and that I was just relating to them as one of them. So right in that moment, we became part of the tribe.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's really cool.
just like that, they could see implication, consequence. They can put it all together. All different deal. So.
Wow, that is so cool.
So this is before. This was quite a bit before the Lace story. So that's why she could speak to me that way, because I was part. I mean, otherwise that would just be out of the question. No way. I mean, she probably gets literally slapped.
Right.
And not
Wow.
everybody was a racist, of course. It's a minority, like in this country, and they
Right.
came into that mindset of those. That mindset, they came in on a minority vote, gerrymandering, and all this stuff. So, yeah. But
Right.
still, it was a part of her reality in her experience. But so because we were the tribe, she could speak to me that way. So anyway, just some history and story here. Just
Very cool.
psychology and how people work and how they think and how people can accept and how energy stuff, consequences, and people can read your intent. And they saw in that moment how my intent was different. And they saw it too with the plate. So by the way, just to finish the story, it makes me very emotional, the story. they bring me they bring me a bit of the donkey meat on this little most beautiful plate I ever seen. It was cracked, but they just brought it to me, and I ate the donkey. Most beautiful meat I ever ate. Sorry, it makes me emotional, the story. Sorry, Beena. But it was so beautiful. It was so awesome. Just awesome.
Wow.
Sorry. I struggle to tell the story because every time it gets me. That little plate, when I think of it, just like so precious, so beautiful, man. The meat was the nicest I ever ate. When we're talking about food that I ate that was really nice earlier today, Beena, that's still the most tastiest meat I ever ate. That
Wow.
donkey. That one, yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew? Exactly. Well, they knew. They knew. They knew. So, yeah. Anyway, I have lots more stories like when I wanted to go hunt a wild donkey with him, but that's it. Well, we'll tell you another time because otherwise we're going to be too much in this. So, yeah. So
That's
anyway,
very
yeah, lots of fun stories. Lots of fun. I got zillions of stories. You're going to hear many more still, but just I don't know why they came up relevant today, but
cool. Love it.
Me, I like it.
yeah.
Me too.
They fun stories. So where were we? Where were we, Erica? Gosh, we used up all the time on stories, but it's
I
all
know.
right.
No, that's okay. I was doing the bread stuff, so I appreciate the
No, it's no
color.
problem. It was fun. It was fun to tell the
And that,
stories.
yeah, that's really cool. That's fascinating. I always I love hearing people's personal experiences anyway, but especially when it's something so foreign and exotic to our experience, that's really cool.
But there's a thread of it, you see. This is the thread to the stories, and we'll see when we do this as part. I mean, it's going to make a course out of that, the young man's story, because it is about an application of impeccability. For
Mm-hmm.
me, in that instance there with the fire, first of all, just to find out what they ate and do that. How can I not ask the farmers to get the meat for them? I'm ordering stuff for the restaurant. How can I not?
Right.
Secondly, once I give it to them, it's like just your impeccability demands that you taste it. It's like,
Right.
come on, it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. You're never gonna get it. But
Right.
I mean, it was really tough asking them because they didn't have much. So, but
Right.
I had to ask. I had to. It was an impeccable thing. I was hoping maybe they'd offer me some. So I held out for so long. I must have waited the whole day. So, or at least half the day. But for them to offer it to me would have been impossible. And so, but it was just out of my mind. I never thought that way. And then they came to realize that. But because of the impeccability of asking, and then me saying, "Well, I'll just take it like out of the pot, like you guys. If you don't mind my fingers," I said to them to that too. Again, impeccability, it had its consequence. And be true to yourself, in other words, and stuff happens. Magical stuff happens. And this is a theme throughout all of those stories. it's quite something. It's quite something, you know. And also just innocence and being childlike, you know, because that was to me my childlikeness. Man, I really wanted to taste that donkey meat. You know, I was very keen. So yeah, it's just being true to yourself, really and truly. You know, it's a very big deal. Very big deal. You know. So yeah, yeah. And they saw our emotion too. I mean, we were eating that mood. Both of us were just, you know, tears streaming down our face, but happy tears. They saw that too. So you know,
Yeah.
what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Yeah, yeah. Different things. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's why I like the stories. You know, they're not just stories of adventure, but they're stories of application. You know, because we really were there because of application, of intent and impeccability and living in attunement. So it is absolutely all of these stories. Now, I've told them out of context. When you hear the whole story, and the start and the contextual build up, it's one thing following another. Then it's a whole different story. It's a very, very big deal, and it's an incredible story. I mean, then you really see the magic of things. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get
Cool.
there. Oh, sorry. Where are we, Erica Jane? Where are we? You get me
Uh,
all sidetracked. Yeah.
oh, I'm trying to decide. We've only got a few minutes, but I'm trying to decide if this session, I actually took a lot of notes throughout the slides in addition to the
Oh,
task.
good. That reminds me. Sorry. Okay, since we just, unless you can stay later, I don't know. But if not, a point I want to make, very important point about the repeat backs.
Mm-hmm.
So the repeat backs are, of course, the main intent of them, at least initial intent, is to check one's comprehension. Now, at this stage of the game, that we can have a fairly high degree of probability that what you're comprehending is accurate because you've tested it enough.
Right.
But that's only one rationale for the repeat backs. The other, of course, is to practice expression, right? Because you're putting what you see in the slides in your own words.
Right.
So it is a practicing self-expression, and particularly the practice of this particular type of content in the expression. You know, it's more abstract. It's a little bit, you know, sometimes it has layeredness to it and so on. So we're practicing that expression. But there's a further reason, and I don't think I've actually mentioned it before. Very powerful reason that we want to do repeat backs. It gives us an opportunity to capital H hear ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal. Because the repeat back is you're repeating something that is not necessarily your own, but because you put it in your own words, and because by this time the sensibility of it, it's easy to connect to and grasp. So it really does become an expression, because it's in your own words, of your own sensibility. But in that repeat back, you can hear it with that external view. Whereas when it's just inside your head, it's not quite the same. And even writing, yes, it helps, but when you actually say it, there's a different power to that. So the repeat backs are really huge for developing this ability to hear and listen to ourselves as we speak. Because
Right.
we do want that. We want to get that ability. It is a profound ability. And the more we get to hear ourselves in the moment, to have that feedback loop go immediately, we can get to adjust and appropriatize in the moment as we're going through. So our ability to express starts to get this loop on itself, and it just starts to get exponential. And also, we can start to listen to implications and consequences of what we say. And it's a whole different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
So the repeat backs are a huge deal when they come to expression, and not just expression. To express ourselves is one thing, but to do so articulately and to do so eloquently and to elucidate and all of the other stuff that comes with expression, this is a whole different deal. And of course with communication also, and particularly when we get to hear what we say from the point of view of consequences and implications. So the repeat backs are quite a big deal, by the way. I don't know if I went into this detail, but it came up the other day, and I said, right, I got to remember to say this. It's a very powerful thing. Very powerful thing. So yeah. So you were going to say, oh, before we go there too, gosh, I'm all full of it today. Did we finish all the tasks on session 1? I thought there were a couple little steps there, the nuanced questions maybe that we didn't quite get to all of them, or did we?
First session, I think so. I think we got through all of them.
Oh, okay. What was the last section, last part of those tasks?
What's the matter? Huh?
it was, what's the difference between capability and intentionality, which we talked.
Yeah.
Write down where you've been emotional or emotionally involved, which we covered. Come to an understanding and write out your understanding, see how it's changed. We did that.
Okay.
Look for examples of exaggerated BMN qualities and see which of them connect.
Okay, we did them all then. All right.
Yep.
You just kind of packed them up, but brilliant.
Yeah.
So understanding for you, Erica Jane, for all of us, but for you in particular, there's like, you have to really go to that last end point of understanding.
Right.
And then only can you sign off and get resolution and finish it. But when you do, you change.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right then, when you get to that final, okay, then you change. You're different.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna have to go.
Okay.
Sarah,
Okay.
So
No problem. All right. Bye-bye, Kay. Bye-bye, Kay. Glad you were here for the stories. So do you have extra time, Erica Jane?
I have a little bit of time.
Okay.
I have
Go as
some
long as you can.
prep that I have to do, but I can go for a little bit. Okay, so we went over the first slide of this one. This session, really all of them in module 3, it's amazing to me how much Phil, I mean, not that I didn't already know, that he was definitely doing, I mean, he's like the poster child for this. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
One of these that come up, I'm like,
yes. And that's the magic. If I were to ask you to give me a rundown of Phil, you wouldn't necessarily write the course. Right?
Right.
However, when you see it, you immediately recognize it.
Right.
And this is very powerful. This is very powerful to name what you've already seen. It's a whole different logic. So as we go along, it might seem like we are really belaboring the obvious. And yes, we are. But it is important to have it, because if you can't name it, then you know it's there, but you can't connect to it. And when we can, and we really become really proficient and expert in this particular course, we're really hammering the expertise. We are really going to become. Why? Because we're wanting to shift out of this paradigm. We have to know it inside out in order for our bureaucrats to be able to abandon it. So we have to see every nuance of it. Every nuance of it. It's very important. All right, I'm listening.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so the next thing I had, this one was, Mom and I actually talked about this the other day when I was going through this session. When we get into causality, starting at such levels, it all flows from there. The key is to realize, when we look at it now from our detached, reasonable, and logical perspective, those distorted beliefs are seen for what they are. At the time these beliefs were acquired by the bullshitters, there was no perspective, only belief, a certain trust and acceptance. Mostly these beliefs aren't consciously acquired. And I said to Mom, we used to have these conversations all the time where she would call me, it's be going on about something that Phil was doing that didn't make any sense. And she would regularly say things like, I just don't understand because, this doesn't make any sense to me. Why would he do blah, 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 blah. And I would regularly say, you are coming at this from a place of assuming that Phil is a logical, reasonable person.
Exactly.
And he's not. But the reason that this doesn't make sense is because you're trying to apply this to someone that is logical, and he's not logical.
Nope.
And I mean, we have that conversation, over and over and over again. And so it is really interesting. I think, especially seeing her, the farther that she gets away from his nonsense, I think the more she's able to see from an outside logical perspective, looking into that. And so
So I was encouraging Kay, when you share with her, you know, as you go through the sessions, to take notes.
Oh yeah.
And you know, basically take the course via you as much as she's able to,
Right.
you know, because this will be very helpful and valuable for her, you know, very
Sure.
much so. So, and for both of you, you know, just as a fun way of doing it. So it's very cool. It's very cool. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I like that.
So I sent her a thing on craziness, but the craziness part does come in the program later, and it's a very important part, you know,
Mhm.
to accept that. Like you said, they're just not rational. They're just not
Right.
logical,
Right.
and they don't want to be.
Right.
They don't want to pay that price. It's, you know, there's too many consequences for them, too much
That's
responsibility.
I think it took her a very long time to really truly see that and honestly, I think she's probably still coming to a place where she's fully seeing his illogic
Right,
and
right.
unreasonability, but it took her a very
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to get to the point where she could make sense of that in her own mind, because I
Right.
mean, really, it seems like we had the same conversation
Oh yeah,
over
oh
and
yeah,
over again
oh yeah.
of, I just don't
Yeah,
understand,
yeah,
because she
yeah,
was
yeah,
still
yeah, yeah.
seeing him as someone who had good intent, and
Right, right.
yeah, I think it just was
Yeah, yeah. It's too
outside.
preposterous for her brain to
Yeah,
comprehend.
it was outside of her comprehension that
Yeah,
that could even
yeah.
be a thing.
Yeah, it's too preposterous. That's it. Earnest good people struggle inordinately with preposterousness. That's why that preposterousness comes first. Once we have this frame of reference to understand that they are preposterous, ridiculous, egregious, outrageous, all of that, and this is a reality. And then the more we start looking, we say, "Oh my God, yes! Oh my God, yes!" So that first chapter, at least, you know, it's the first main chapter there, that chapter on preposterousness, it doesn't quite have the same impact now as it will have when we get to the end of the course.
Right, right,
Because even though you might tell somebody preposterousness is difficult to believe in, they don't believe it until you sort of prove the preposterousness to them. It's just
right,
a nature of preposterousness. So as we go through, this will get more and more proven, and as you share with Kay, it will for her too, and it will be very transformative for her.
right, absolutely.
I mean, we talked about it already a bit, but you know, I don't have the time to go into it and the space to go into it in too much detail. So, you know, that's why I said to her, take notes when Erica shares with you.
Right,
Take notes.
right.
Be very useful. Be very useful. Very powerful.
Yes,
As you
absolutely.
see.
Still, I feel that it is kind of like really necessary that this PSP course to for K also for
Oh
everyone.
yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
is important because Erica, about Phil, what you feel now from K? Where is she?
Mm, yeah. Important point.
Uh, so
Hmm.
I think, um,
I mean, we understand it's a delicate question, but still, it's a very important question. Yeah.
personally, I think that she is, well, okay. So I think that she has come a long way from where she was. Certainly, she's
All
come
right.
a long way
Yes.
from where she was. I do think that there is still, I mean, I'm kind of inclined to say not even a small part of her that still does not see the full
Yes.
extent of
Yes.
his,
Yes.
or really anyone. Like, I think that's one of the things that I love about my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Her child, she is very childlike in
Yeah.
every sense of the word, but I think she also has a propensity toward some level of childishness, and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
childish
Mm,
in like
mm,
being indulgent,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of naivety.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
mhm,
I think it's just hard for her to
Yeah. Yeah.
believe that anybody
Yeah.
would do or be
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of cunning
Yeah.
and manipulative
Yeah.
on
It's an
purpose.
awful truth that she doesn't
And,
want to accept.
right. And so I think for her, it's an ongoing, and I mean, it's the same for me too, but for her especially, it's an ongoing learning process of really coming to terms with that and seeing it honestly for what it is. And it's hard for me because over the course of the last, I mean, geez, how long has it been? It's been like 15, at least 15 years. No, more than that, surely 16, 17 years since Phil came into our lives. There have been moments where I really thought that she got it and that she could see what was going on. And then she would sort of immediately get sucked back in. And so there is a part of me that I struggle with knowing whether it's being pessimistic or whether it's being just sort of aware and realistic. But there is a part of me that sort of is hesitant to really trust that she is actually getting it to the point that she would not get sucked back in, because I've seen that happen so many times where I thought that she really got it and she was going to be able to be free of it, and then the next thing I knew, she was right back in there again. So
that's why Beena's asking this question.
Right. I'm very cautious. I am really excited for her. I'm pleased for her that she's making so much progress. I do think she's making progress, and I think, whatever it was that happened with her in the car a month ago or whatever, where she finally kind of let go of a lot of this stuff, I think that was really big for her, and I'm really positive about the progress that she's going to make from that point. But there is always that thing in the back of my mind, I think, that is sort of hesitant to believe that she's made it to the point where she's not going to be vulnerable to that again.
Very sophisticated, and we hear you on this, and it's why Beena asking this question.
Right.
Because this is our perception too, and
it is yes.
Go ahead, Beena. I just want to say real quick, just one quick thing. The conversation with Phil and our discussion of it, we basically spent the whole session on that phone call. It was very positive in terms of growth, awareness, perception, discernment, everything. It was a lot that came out of that. Very cool. So just that one gift of that phone call, that was a huge deal for a lot. And I sort of asked this question a little bit, in terms of, seeing Phil through rose-colored glasses a little bit. And there was a bit of shock at, like, just the idea of, maybe Phil coming back into her life, in a more way than just a phone call. So that was pretty huge. It's not that she just said, "Oh my God, no," and it was just words. When I asked the question, there was a bit of shock, because I think there was that in that moment of asking it, there was a realization that, oh my goodness, it could have been a possibility.
Right.
But after this, okay, we can easily revert back to old habits. We have to do a bit of overbending to get to new ones. So it's something that we are watching, potentially paying attention to, because I saw when she was talking about him, because he comes up a lot, obviously, as well, right? There are many indications of this wanting to see the positive side only, which is a good thing, but we can't be naive, and we can't be foolish, and we can't pretend that things aren't what they are.
Right.
We've got to deal with that awful truth. That's why I'm keen for, I know you share, but in this case, the sharing, it takes on an extra dimension. So you got extra duties now. You're facilitating PSP for
Right.
Which is a great challenge. It's a capital D diplomacy challenge, of course. Also, now you do have a different relationship with Kay, which is very magical. So you can do this, but certainly it's you know, it's a little extra slant that you come in because you are now looking to be. You're not just sharing what's going on for you. There's a little bit of purposefulness to it. Now that may always have been there. I don't know, but uh, you know, it just puts that little bit of extra onus on there, which is
Hmm.
cool. So as you go through it and the sharing, share with us your sharing,
Right, right.
so that you know this is very cool because as you go through it, you might want to tweak and adapt and you know fiddle with that with the sharing a little bit. Yeah.
Right, right.
Ah, very cool. I love it. I love it. I love it. Ah, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Now,
So
this is not the juice. This is Beena's concoction that I'm forced to drink. By the way,
is it
it's
golden
called
milk?
bori milk. Well, it's turmeric milk. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's warmed up milk with turmeric in it.
yeah.
Wow. With the sugar and
I
black pepper. I add the black pepper. It helps, by the way.
I should be drinking that, but I haven't. I haven't been forcing myself to. But yeah,
Put some sugar in it, then it's fine.
yeah,
So you know, I mean, the only thing that I don't like about it is the graininess. The
right.
taste is
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
So, Beena, was there something you were starting to say about your question?
Okay. First thing that I asked that because for me, K is in a different place because potentially your grandma, I don't want to say it like painted or like, in a very solid, definitive way, but potentially she was a BMN,
Right, right,
and K is raised by her.
right,
When people like indirectly, especially for my parents, it's a different deal. They have a kind of acceptance of all this BS.
Yeah.
It's really difficult and different to for you. Okay, you are not raised by any BMN, right? You have a different understanding of this. But K, she is raised by a person who
and
has that qualities in her.
that is one of the things that I find really interesting while you mention that. You know, I was raised by my grandma,
Yeah.
and
Partially. Yeah.
I find that
Hmm.
so interesting because
Hmm.
I um I think my mom and well, I know that my mom and I had a very different a very different relationship with my grandma. Um,
Mhm.
Mm,
and
mm.
it's so fascinating to me, the nuance and subtlety involved in that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have thought about that so much, about what sort of caused this total difference. I mean, I think my mom sees my grandma. There certainly there are things that I sympathize with and can see, but I think we saw her very differently. And I think part of that was because of the way that my grandma treated my mom versus the way she treated me. I do think she treated me differently than she did my mom. But part of it, I think, also is the way that my mom interpreted what was coming
Uh,
from my grandma.
might be, but it might be because that you cued your grandma that you have your mother on your side, but Kay didn't have
Right.
that luxury with
Yeah.
her when she was a child.
Right.
She didn't have that protection from like, okay, the mother is here. But
Right.
for you, it was a different thing because Kay was with you.
Right.
So it's a different thing, and as far as I understand from okay, when she shared her dreams and these things, she can do anything. As a mother, she can go like beyond her capabilities and okay, stretch her boundaries to do anything for you to protect her child.
Right. Right.
So it was an understanding and awareness for your grandma. So that might be also
Right.
the reason behind that she was treating you differently, and
It's
she
so,
treated
yeah,
yeah.
it's so interesting. I mean, I have thought so long about just the differences and the similarities in our relationships with, you know, between the three of us, and what caused it and all of that. And it's very interesting. And it's really unfortunate to me that my mom had such a different experience growing up with my grandma than I did. You know, it's really sad to hear her talk about the way that she felt as a child as a result of those experiences. And
So
yeah, I think you're definitely, I completely agree about almost getting to a place where you, I mean, I don't think my mom would ever say that she consciously seeks out that kind of behavior, but subconsciously that becomes normal, and it's just sort of what you,
It's familiar. It's
yeah,
familiar.
yeah,
it's familiar. So they have kind of passive acceptance for that
right.
type of behaviors. So
Right.
that is might be a potential risk of that she might again fall into this thing. As Sil have a different perspective on that. That in our last conversation when she was sharing about Phil's chat and that story, I was feeling kind of thing. Like that was a very subtle thing, but that was kind of like feeling important, and Kay was feeling important about them. That okay,
Mhm.
oh yes, so that was something. Maybe it is just because that she got so much of negativity from that person, and she said that okay, it's a kind of acceptance of that. Okay, yes, he is recognizing that he was wrong at that time. Might be because of this, but I was feeling that there was some kind of like very subtle, but the importance of that incident that it happened was there. So I was thinking about that what is happening, and I feel that, as I already said, that PSP course, I feel that it is actually a need, okay,
Right.
to do that. Yeah. It, I don't know about that the details, but I feel that it might be more helpful if she do that independently,
Mm.
not by like any other second-hand source or something.
Right.
Because you can do it amazingly, of course, but you have a relationship also. It is not about your capabilities, but it is just that you have a relationship, and it's a different deal.
Right.
So okay, it is, but it is just my understanding. That's why I asked you. I know that it was a very personal question that what you feel about that. There is she, but
Right.
it was my concern that I feel a very subtle uh, acceptance of that kind of behavior. She
Hmm.
is aware, completely aware of. Nothing is new for her. Any idea of perspective.
Right.
She's
Right.
completely aware of all these things. But the acceptance is when I'm okay. I am here in Pakistan, and I have an acceptance of my culture.
Right.
It is innate for me. Sometimes, like you guys might be feeling like what is this? What is happening? And I was like, oh yeah, it happens. This is how it is. So okay, I'm just exaggerating a bit, but a subtle acceptance it is, because the way we brought up is it's a different. Thank you for that clarity, because as we are moving forward in way of impact living, it is to actually understand that where this
Hmm.
person is and what is happening.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you
So
are
it,
continuing with your notes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a big deal, and also, even though you were partially raised with your grandma, you weren't raised with her in the same way as your mom. So,
no, no,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's a different whole logic to it. It's very fascinating. Now, part of that too is BMNs are just they're basically bullies, but they're also insecure, and
Hmm.
you possess a large measure of independence of being from a fairly early age, and a certain strength of character also, and so you weren't as easy to bully.
Well, and I think I have thought a lot about, I think that part of my grandma's sort of perception of my mom was, um, my grandma um, dealt with some a lot of hardships in her life, at a young, I mean, relatively young age. And I think she was always sort of hammering into my head at a very young age about being independent and, not being dependent on a man, and being able to take care of myself and look out for myself because of things that happened to her. And I think that she perceived in my mom a I think she saw my mom as the type of person that did not meet that. I think she saw her as someone who was dependent
Yeah,
and
exactly.
wasn't
Exactly.
able to be
Exactly.
independent, wasn't able to take care of
Exactly.
herself.
Exactly.
And I think that
Wow.
I think that scared her
Yeah.
because she didn't want my mom to end up in the same place that she did. And I think, I think there were a lot of implications of that. I think part of it was from a place of love because she didn't want to see her get hurt. Part of it was, I think, almost a resentment of,
Yes.
I don't want you to be this way. You need to be different. And I think it's not good that you're like this. And I think my mom felt that on many levels, that she felt that kind of resentment from my grandma that she was that way. And I think my grandma just didn't see that same kind of thing in me, or at least not to the same extent my mom. And so she just treated me differently because I think she didn't see as much of that in me for whatever reason. Um, but there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, there's more to it, and keep this in mind as we go through the program. But just kind of real quick too, your mom's niceness irritated your grandma.
Yes, I
She
know. I
saw it
think
as weakness,
yeah,
and for that BMN bully personality, they're going to pick on you if they see you as weak in
right,
some way. It
Yeah.
irritates them, and that resentment that this is a daughter of mine who is weak.
right.
And of course, your grandma's
Mhm.
weak in her own way, right?
Yeah,
In that insecurity that she's looking to cover up. So
right,
yeah, she's seeing her own flaws as she
right,
perceives them,
right.
her own
Yeah.
weakness in her daughter, and this is massive. That's where
Yes.
the resentment comes from. So yeah, big deal, big deal, big deal. But luckily, for both of you and your mom, that she saw what she wanted to be, would like to be in you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, it's that balancing thing, and, that saved the whole thing from being a complete and utter mess, saved your mom too. Because your mom shifted from her doing for herself, she put it all into
mm-hmm.
you.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I've actually talked with Kathy about this a lot, and it's something that Kathy has kind of cautioned me on. Um, I think my grandma, there again, there's a lot of factors involved, but I think my grandma, I mean, I have said this to Kathy as well. There were a lot of things said to me from both sides, from my mom and my grandma, at a very young age about each other that were probably not appropriate.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, they were not appropriate for a child who's being taken care of by both people to hear these things about the other person. It was not an appropriate thing for me to be in the middle the way I was. And because of that, I think I regularly received the message from my grandma that my mom needed to be taken care of. And, she kind of needed a keeper, basically. And I, since becoming an adult, and especially since my grandma passed away, I am trying to be very careful about not defaulting into a position of always taking care of my mom. Um,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's interesting
Yes.
because I think
Yes.
Wow.
on the one hand, part of that, I think that kind of natural tendency is just in me to take care of people, and so that kind of comes
Yes.
out.
Mm.
Part of it
Yes.
is this kind of conditioning from my grandma, but part of it is also, I think my mom has come to believe that she does need to be taken care of.
Used to.
And
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
that she
Yes.
has
Yes.
had,
Erica, from it's quite legitimate you saying it in the present tense, but certainly over the last couple of weeks now, very recently also that's completely shifted to be a past tense thing.
right. Well, that's good.
Massive,
But
massively so.
I think,
Oh, it's
yeah,
phenomenal. Yeah.
she has had for
Yes.
virtually her
Yes.
entire
Yes.
life,
No, what you're saying absolutely is there.
has had this. I mean, I think it's an idea in her head that she needs to be taken care of, and because of that, she kind of, I mean, it's sort of cueing that behavior in her. I think she tends to
Yes.
put herself into
Yes.
situations where she needs to be taken care of. She doesn't, just like me, she doesn't like making decisions, and so she kind of looks for someone to step in and do things for her. And so I am trying to be, it's a fine balance because I don't ever want my mom to feel like she's by herself and doesn't have somebody to be there for her. But I'm really trying to be cognizant, especially right now when she's jumping out, just quit her job, trying to figure out what she's doing. I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to not be, I mean,
A crutch.
hard.
Not be her
Yeah, it's
crutch.
hard because I don't want to just completely disappear and say you're on your own, but I'm trying to kind of push her to not always feel like, oh, here's this cushion that I can fall on, because I want her to see for herself that she can take care of herself. She doesn't have to have someone else there, to catch her in case she falls down. I'm trying to help her kind of see that that's not true about herself.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
delicate balance.
Yes. Okay. So this is a huge point, and it's a fun thing, and I'm really loving this. So, uh, first key point on this is put all of this entire perspective, just put it on hold for a couple of weeks when we get to the hearing and helping,
Okay.
right? Because this is going to come in absolutely profoundly. Everything in that is geared, at least will be pertinent and relevant to this particular point. Everything, your interaction with Kay, right? So you not being a crutch for Kay, or Kay being dependent on you, this is a huge deal for many reasons. One, it's not appropriate for Kay, but it's not fair to you either,
Right.
right? I mean, you have a life to live. You cannot have this where somebody is, who doesn't need to be dependent on you, becomes to some degree. This is a very sophisticated thing that you're seeing, and it's a very important thing. Now, in the way the pattern has been going, this is an entirely appropriate perspective, but the pattern is changing. So
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to that changing pattern and kind of anticipate it, so that
Right.
you also cue this change of pattern. Right?
Right.
You're already seeing, I mean, the changes for me are just phenomenal what I see in K. And we are really looking at K almost going back to continuing to where she left off as a girl, as a
Mm.
child, and starting from this point. It's a
Right.
phenomenal thing, but with the sophistication and awareness of now, of course, but she's in that space of learning and growing. It's a phenomenal space, that
Right.
openness. Now you're also in that space, except for you go back to girl, not child, which is that's just your unusualness, but still, it's a very big deal. But as you go forward, and we'll get into this, just keep one point in mind, maybe for now, and we'll get into it in detail later. But I'm also cognizant of the time right now. Share, 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 share. That's it. Just share. Share where you at. Share what you
Right.
feel. For me, from my perspective, just
Mm-hmm.
share. That's it. Then you escape this whole problem, and you set it aside, and it doesn't become an issue. The moment you feel like you need to be doing something 4K or 2K, and that's where you get into this exponential difficulties.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it. So when you just share, you're cool. That's it. Not a problem. Share whatever you think is pertinent. Share whatever you think is relevant. Doesn't matter, but just share. Particularly now with the PSP course, just share. Basically, you're ending up doing the course twice.
Right.
The same what you're sharing with us, just share with Kay also. So I do want to encourage Kay to stay on, after her session. So when it comes up, I mean, if it's okay with you,
Absolutely.
which, yeah. So that would be very helpful for her to stay on and just listen to the things, because now she's going to get it when you discuss, as you're doing it, as you're going through it, then she comes and listens to it, and it's just that doubleness. She gets to do a lot of it herself, and it's just very convenient that you are after her. So,
Right, right,
but just share, just share, just share, just share. And the more you get into it, the more you'll see how the sharing is liberating.
right.
Right, right. And if you do feel like you have something that you wish to share that sort of falls into like, gee, mama, I wish you kind of learn this, get into the habit of sharing that point along with a few alternative perspectives.
Hmm.
It's a very profound habit,
Okay.
because then you force choice.
Right, true.
And you force responsibility to take the choice. Plus, whenever you're sharing, it's always going to be for me. It's part of the for me philosophy. When you emphasize, as I see it, for me, just that emphasis and just those two words automatically says, this is my opinion, take it as so.
Mhm.
Now
Right,
the person has to choose to take it on or not. Right?
right,
So even if you don't present multiple perspectives, just the fact that you're saying, this is my opinion, this is my perspective, I'm just sharing how I feel, etc., it forces choice. And that's the
Mhm.
deal here. That's really the bottom line. That dependency, it's always avoidance of choice.
right.
It's easy, it's a cop out. And this was the topic of today's, really, a big part of our session today was about this point of responsibility. So
Yeah,
this is a very big deal. And
yeah.
the avoidance of responsibility, it's why we don't want to be aware. Because
Mm,
with awareness comes responsibility. It's
right,
part of the
right.
deal. So there's a big shift. There's a big shift going on. So just put everything on hold is what I'm trying to say. Just put it all
Okay.
on hold. There's lots going on. It's just fantastic. But I do appreciate not just the candor, obviously that's awesome, but just the sophistication of your perspective. So
Hmm. Why?
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. It's really huge. And I am keen to get into uh, this particular topic more, because it is a profound mechanism for the application of moreness,
Mm,
and especially as we get into the nobleness and the capital D diplomacy and the
right,
finesse
right,
of the ethics of choice and responsibility and all of this stuff.
right,
It's huge. It's huge. It's just, it's like everything in your life is just tailor made for all of this. It's unbelievable.
right, right.
Unbelievable, just the magicness of absolutely everything. It's
Yeah.
quite incredible. So, right. I don't know how long you got, but before we
I
go, how's Joe? How's Joe?
He's good. He's good. He is doing really well.
He's keeping up with the program, and he's
He
enjoying it.
is. We have made it. We've both made it to the fourth session. So at this rate, you're right. It's going to be like 2024 by the time we get done with this
It's
thing.
all right.
But but he's doing well. He's keeping up with it. So we'll go over his stuff.
I mean, you guys, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you put so much into it, and that he is making the time despite all of the other stuff in life. And it
Right.
is a huge deal, as you see. And particularly to keep that motivation and interest alive in Joe. It's a part of an extra little degree of difficulty for you. That it's a little bit on you, that responsibility. Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's extra in the time, so you got to make it fun and enjoyable for him. So
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So you have lots of
And
responsibilities on your shoulders, girl. But what can you do?
And really quickly before I go, before I forget, I wanted to express appreciation. Yesterday I had a session with Kathy, and we were talking about mature masculine and feminine qualities and immature masculine and feminine. We had been talking about that in a previous session, and we talked about it just very briefly. And so I did some research on that and looked up, different kind of qualities and things that fall into either bucket. And actually, I think we started talking about that because of Cher bringing up the women running with wolves and all that. And so in my research, I came across all of these different things that it said were part of the healthy or mature masculine. Um, and I was expressing to Kathy that, I was, one of the reasons I wanted to do some looking into this was because I was realizing that throughout my life, I really have not had, I've had very few personal examples of healthy masculine behavior, not only in men in my life, but I think in women as well.
Yes,
So
yes.
I was saying, boy, I probably, that's really probably something I need to look into and make sure that I'm kind of keeping up with that, because I really don't think I've had very many good examples of
Right,
that.
right.
Has certainly been that for me. But I started looking into it, and it was really surprising. I mean, I don't know why I was surprised, but it was surprising to me that a lot of those things in the list for healthy masculine um, characteristics and behavior and habits are all things that we have been working on in this
Yes,
program and in the previous program.
yes,
So I was really
yes.
pleased that, you know, all of that was on there. But I also, it was really interesting because I was saying to Kathy yesterday, I was talking about how, you know, I was realizing that I didn't really have very many good examples of that. And I said, you know, I have a few. And she said, well, I would imagine that Joe is one. I said, yes. And she said, unprompted, and I would guess that Sil is as well. And I said, yes, you know, you're correct. So
Yes.
obviously, you know, your essence is being broadcast through me all the way to her, but I am
Wow,
pretty
wow.
sure today, I'm sure you know, I'm sure you know this, but I want to say specifically that I do so appreciate you,
You're making me cry again now. I knew it.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that example,
Oh,
filling that role,
wow.
filling, you know, really, and not only being an example of that, but showing me how to do that as well. So
Now that's the point. That's the point that I appreciate. Thank you very much. That my sharing of it is because I do see that you have appropriate masculine in you.
right, right. Well,
Yes.
I'm starting to see that as well, and I definitely, I'm very grateful that those are the things that a lot of what we've been focusing on is kind of helping to um, bring about some of those habits that
Yeah,
cultivate those things. But I also am really seeing that I have also had a lot of those things in me the whole time.
yes,
I'm just kind of honing that now.
yes, yes. I want to read your quote before we go.
Sure.
It's a recent quote, and it's a very transformative quote for me personally. And it's been a huge quote for Beena also. Uh, oh, I thought it was, well, let me screen share, yeah. I thought it was recent in my quote file, but I guess I put more into my quote file than I realized. So let me just make sure I didn't scroll past it. Yeah, okay. So that's where I'm most recently. It's the one with the ego quote, Beena.
Yes.
Oh, that's not it. Wow, Beena. Stop going in here. Oh dear.
By the way, while he's looking for this,
Yeah.
I'm glad I remembered to say this while you were both on the phone.
Mm,
The all of the list of the healthy, I was very surprised at how many things on the immature feminine list were things that really resonated with issues that I have dealt with in the past, and things that
wow.
I think
Wow.
for a long time I've been working on pulling myself out of. But you know, I really saw how there were a lot of those things that I had dealt with in the past, but the healthy or the mature feminine list was really interesting to look through. And I thought of you, Beena, when I was reading through a lot of those things. Um, you exemplified so much of that to me. And so it was really interesting. I was thinking of both of you when I was reading through this.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is okay. You also are part of uh, what and who I am and who I will be, because we all are sharing, and your sharing is profound.
Well,
Every single day we are learning. We are
ab-
learning together.
absolutely. I agree. I agree. But I just wanted to make sure that I voiced
Here we go.
specifically my love and appreciation for both of you.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, thank you,
It's
thank you.
truly, truly a pleasure, and
Oh,
really a big thing to actually hear that. We were discussing before that this appreciation, and as Sil is like, he changed everything for me. I'm quite reluctant to share my feelings with people. It's not really easy. Still, I'm working on that. It is not like that I'm not feeling, but when it comes to be vocal about that, it's a different deal for me. And when Cher posted something about me, and I was uh, talking to Sil, and I said, Sil, yeah, I am the one who is so reluctant to say that, but I am the one who always feel, and I'm saying that to Sil also, and I said to him that you actually, in the most subtle way, actually like change everything for me. And this capital A appreciation for us, it is becoming more and more important and needed.
Right.
So it's a big deal, Erica, what you are saying.
yes, yes. I was saying to Beena, one of the things that I appreciate, and with you also, Erica, is that you enable me to be me.
I love that.
It's a very simple statement,
I
but
love
it's
that.
a huge thing. So, what was Sophie's response to that, Beena?
So yes, it was, you enables me to be more of me. So yes.
To be more
Yeah.
me. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's a little story for that. But anyway, that's a huge deal. And this appreciation. So, our relationship is based on mutual appreciation.
Right.
Now, not appreciation that, of course, has got any semblance on any kind of distortion or BS. Just real, actual, true, pure appreciation.
Mhm.
And that is very liberating. It's very freeing. When you truly see somebody and you see their fullness, you see their moreness, and you appreciate it, and they see that you see it, and they feel that feedback and that loop. This is a profound thing. So that's why I say it's not just with you, Beena, but you also, Erica Jane. Now, what I want to share is the appreciation going back. It's a two-way thing, right?
Mhm.
This is the point of my quote here now. Yes, we are coming at, maybe there is some difference in terms of connectivity to content, but there is no difference in terms of moreness. None,
Mhm.
right? So that's a whole deal that we need to understand. So it's essentially catching up. That's the deal as
Right.
far as I can see it. But I want to put this point that I'm going to make in this quote, I feel is a nexus leverage fulcrum point of, kind of white holing things and to explode into them, just as a point of potential limitation that needs to be removed. So this is something that came up for me not so long ago. I said, all my life I fought against ego, battled with it, and even succeeded in vanquishing ego, only to discover when I had done so, I needed ego back in order to be happy and appreciate and enjoy being who I had become.
Mhm.
The past tense is important there. So, yeah, so be aware of this, that we fight against ego, but in order to be happy and appreciate and enjoy being who you are,
Mhm.
really all caps are, we need that little bit of ego back
Right.
in order to do so. It's a most peculiar thing, but that's philosophy of opposite. And I see this regularly in the way things work when they make sense. That you kind of have to get rid of it in order to use it appropriately. It's like power. You can't really use it, but you have to use it. So it's that same conundrum that things work in this way. So
Right.
just be aware of this with yourself. That appreciation, it has that little bit of ego, needs to come back in positively.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. It's very important. It's very, very important. So this is a big deal, this quote. Yeah, I'll send it to you actually.
Okay.
I'll put it in Messenger so you have it. So yeah, a very big deal. What was also fun is I actually was going to ask you earlier in the session. I said, I'm very curious when you share the stuff with Kathy, if she has any comments that say like, that sounds a little off for me, or that sounds interesting, or any kind of feedback comment. So yeah, you come with the feedback comment. So That's pretty huge. That's pretty huge. So at some point, I'm hoping, like on an open Friday or whatever, maybe Kathy will come and just hang out with us. Yeah.
Yeah, she has been very, every time I share with her, the things that I'm thinking about and working on, she takes it and runs with it and is really interested in hearing what we're talking about. And she kind of does her own repeat backs. And so she's very much a part of the same
Oh, good.
mind
Good.
space, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'd love it if someday that she can, maybe on some Friday. She just comes and hangs out and chat. We just shoot the fat and whatever the topic of the day is. That would be pretty cool, right? So it'd be
Oh, I
awesome. It'd be awesome. What's that?
Let's say John Connor
Oh,
requested.
right. Yeah, John Connor joined the group today. I thought it was fun. That was fun. So I wasn't sure if you get the joke, Beena. I don't know if you watched the movies or not.
No, actually, no. I do that, but the name sounds like okay. Because we were
Okay.
discussing about
So yeah,
having
Erica Jane, you
funny.
explain. You explain for Beena.
Well, I am not a Terminator expert by any means.
Ah,
Yeah.
But
Terminator.
as a Terminator reference and
Yeah.
John Connor, I haven't, this is blasphemy, but I have not watched all of the original ones. I've seen some of the later ones, but I haven't watched all of them. But I think John Connor, like somehow or other, John Connor is like the key to saving the world in the future.
Yes.
And so the Terminator, he like creates the Terminator or something and sends it to the past to make sure that he stays alive. It's a whole, it's a whole thing.
It's a very but John Connor is the key central figure in the Terminator series. Everything revolves around John Connor. He's like a prophetic figure. He's back in the past and all of the stuff. So yeah. So
He joined that today. Good.
Good. Yeah, I don't know. It's a whole.
But anyway, so it's just fun that John Connor joined the group. I thought that was very cool. I thought you'd get a kick out of that. So very fun. All right, we're off to bed. Yeah, Beena?
Just before going there, I feel that before stepping into sharing with Kay, just take a power pause and it is just my perspective. Just think it through to the end because it whole lot of delicacy, like really delicate dealing with that, and it needs whole lot of diplomacy also. Not only for Kay, but also for you, Erica, because it might be kind of a subtle reversal in role. She is your mother, and I just have some concerns about that.
But that's
Just
always
think
been a
about
bit
it.
of the case, right? That your role has been a bit reversed.
Yeah.
Because Kay mentioned this, that it's even more so maybe now. But the main, sorry, not but. My apologies, Beena. In addition to what Beena's saying, I want to get out of this habit of saying buts.
We say that without having any understanding that okay, it is by implication, it is like okay, I'm contradicting. No, we have
It's not.
complete understanding, but still we say, but I'm saying that.
So, and what Beena's saying, what's happening is you've had a relationship, and the relationship has got continuity, and you are keeping this continuity fresh. But from session to session, you guys are changing profoundly. So that power pause is to say, oh, what I assumed the relationship is, it's no longer valid. Just assume that whatever you assumed in the past about your relationship, no longer valid, because not only are you changing exponentially, so is Kate.
That's
so,
a really, yeah.
So your relationship is in profound transition now. And I would actually recommend you start paying deliberate, focused attention to the changes in not just yourselves, but in your relationship. To actively look for them, to start cueing and to look for the changes in each other and to how this is changing and affecting your relationship. Because this is going to be a magical thing, because the moment you start doing that, and I'll mention it to Kay also, I think Kay's already been looking at you with the eye of change. Since you started Wave Impeccability, she was very keen. I remember when you were on the couch, Joe, and she came a few times and sat, from that time already, and we first chatted to her, she was looking at you with this eye to see the changes very profoundly. So she's kind of cueing it in you, but that as a reverse feedback loop, This is
Right.
magical, because
Right.
when you really make this deliberate, conscious effort, almost as a task, to say, okay, I'll ask you actually, what are the changes that are happening in K? Not
Right.
just the overt ones, but the subtle ones, which are really profound. Now that cueing, that connectivity, oh, it's going to feed back on each other, and it's a magical thing. So just know that you are going to end up in a completely different relationship to what you have now.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. One that likely I don't think either of you have imagined.
Right. Right.
I mean, seriously, I really mean this, because this is where we're heading into an
Yeah.
entirely different relationship. So that's why I'm so keen to have Joe. It's necessity. It's an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just being preemptive in case Joe gets too much work and he say, I can't do it this week. Don't let him get behind, because once he does, the whole thing will fall. It'll drop off completely. So it's
Yeah.
very key. Even if he does it half, at least he sort of stays along with it. It's very key. It's very, very, very essential. So
Yeah.
this is most fascinating and most exciting, and oh my goodness, am I enjoying this? It is such a treat. It is such a treat. I cannot tell you how much a joy it is for us, right, Beena?
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and with K too, the sessions with K are just a
Oh
profound
my
joy.
God, it's a
I
different
imagine.
deal,
Yeah,
total different experience.
yeah.
This way of impackability was never been these sessions never been like this. It's not about that. Okay, she is the only one who is doing that in that particular way, but her perceptions, her magic to see and perceive things in a different way is a totally new and different
Yep.
experience.
It's
I
fantastic. So,
I agree
yeah,
completely.
yeah. Just so much magic. Just so much magic. It just it compounds on itself, and it's something special. It's something special. I just absolutely love it. So yeah,
All right.
yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. All right, what's today?
All right.
Thursday. Oh, my time. It's just so we'll see you tomorrow. Brilliant, brilliant. We'll see you tomorrow. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, yes. Oh, so magical. Bye bye,
Bye.
everything. Bye bye.
Okay,
See you tomorrow. See
bye.
you tomorrow. Yes. Good night.
Okay.
Good night.